Happy Monday to you. We are quickly running out of January days for this 2023. It's the 30th already. That means by Wednesday, we are going to be firmly in the grasp of February. It is super cold out there. George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. I know because I was just outside and came in. And it's deceptive because not a lot of snow fell last night. There were some flurries and stuff. Some cars had some little bit of cover on them. But, oh my goodness, is it cold. It is right now, according to just me standing outside, it's got to be like 100 below. I that's just a guess. Don't know. But the paper here in front of me says that the low today will be 3 with a high of 12 degrees. That is remarkably consistent with what the Channel 7 folks had put out 4 days ago on the 26th, the last time I was able to collect this. They had it being a high of 10. Now, where they really start to come off the rails, though, is they predicted last week, they predicted that Tuesday would be a high of 20. That's tomorrow. Now they've upgraded that to 27. Last week, they said this Wednesday, the 1st of February, would be 25. Now they say 38. And frankly, folks, it gets a lot warmer after that. It goes 38 to 42 to 45 by Friday. But given the changes that they have made thus far, not that impressed. Also, they had predicted previously Saturday and Sunday would be light snow, flurries, all that stuff. The only thing they got right was the cold. A little bit of flurries last night, at least down where we were, but I didn't detect a whole lot of snow getting around. Now, I did not get to spend Friday with you. Happy to talk about that as we go through the show. I had some court stuff to do. Yes, the state of Colorado has still recklessly allowed me to be a licensed and practicing attorney in the state of Colorado. And I had agreed to do a case, and I just don't do criminal cases, folks. But I did agree to do one, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that and where I think that case is going to go. But Friday, I was in Montrose. My thanks to United Airlines for having several daily direct flights from Denver to Montrose, and it is a yard dart shot from DIA over to the Montrose Regional Airport because you go up and then you go right back down. It's like a 35-minute flight. And so that was nice, not too bumpy, a little bumpy. Only had to say a few prayers there from time to time. And then spent the night at this is no joke, I'm not an attorney, but I did spend a night at a Holiday Inn. I did spend a night at a Holiday Inn on Thursday night. Friday, went to court with the rest of the team. And it was awesome. I mean, honestly, I miss being in the courtroom. It's weird to be on the other side of the room. But when you feel like you're doing the right thing and you're on the side of justice, it has the same feeling as when I was the DA. So it was very satisfying. If there's a chance, I'll talk to you about sort of what went on. And frankly, I'd love to share a lot more with you after today, because I think today is going to be a decisive day in what happens with this case. Now, currently it's set for trial, February 14th. That's Valentine's Day. Set for trial on the 14th to last up to 4 days. But I am optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that after today, that may no longer be an issue, but we'll see. And I'll let you know more about that. But it was good to get back in the courtroom. That's the first time I think I've been in there since STEM. I don't think I have been in a courtroom as an attorney making an argument since STEM. And that's going back to, July of 2021. Is that possible? Yeah, that's possible. That's crazy that it's been that long. Anyway, listen, a lot of other stuff this weekend, a lot of sports for the little guy. I mean, Saturday was baseball. No, I'm sorry. That's not the right order. Wrestling, baseball, and then a basketball game at 8 o'clock at night. 8 o'clock at night. Who plays basketball at 8 o'clock at night? These guys did. So they wrapped up the regular season, really rough season for the team. But it's a team of, and I mean this in a gentle way, it's like the island of misfit toys. Do you know what I mean? Like there are many teams that have been playing together for years and they played through this league. This was a team that was like the Dirty Dozen. They just threw these guys together and they've really gotten better and better as the season's progressed. But again, what can you do in one season? And so we've got the playoffs this weekend and we'll see how far these guys can go. They have a lot of grit. They have a lot of heart. They just haven't been playing together. They're missing some basics and all that stuff, but they're really, really good kids. So it was fun to watch that. And then yesterday, of course, another freaking wrestling tournament. This one at my old high school, Bear Creek High School. Now, I never set foot in that school because I had the old one and they raised it. and built this new one. But all the old plaques and banners and stuff are hanging there. I think Gramps putting his finger in my eye as we're walking down the halls. He goes, "Hey, Dad, let's go to the Athletic Hall of Fame and find your picture." And I go, "We don't need to go down there, son, because it's not up there."
That's going to be a short trip.
He knows the answer to that. He's just being funny. But we did go and look, and I talked to him about some people from my class. And for me, it's still not that long ago. But when you do the math, oh, Billy, it is so long ago. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that long ago, but it has been.
It's been a long time, man. It hurts my heart to look at some of this stuff I look at the pictures and I recognize those dudes. And then I realize I haven't seen them in more than 3 decades.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of spooky. Ran across some old photos, cleaning some stuff out with my wife last weekend. Yeah, it was last weekend. And pulled out some pictures. And my kids, I'm not sure if this is a compliment. I'm going to take it as a compliment. But they were like, my daughter's like, "Dad, you were hot." I'm like, wait,
hey, hello.
How come that's past tense? I just,
just in
general.
Listen.
I mean, I'm just like, hey, I know. Again, I look at it and think that, again, yeah, Dad wasn't always this bad. This, at one point or another, we were acceptable in public situations, but not
buddy,
anymore.
That's a win,
Yeah.
even past tense.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have looked at the picture and been like, "Oh, you've kind of always been you." You know what I mean? And then you're like,
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, they actually, the really nice compliment was that a couple of the pictures, they took the pictures and then put them out on their social media, and a large number of their friends said that I was both good looking and that my wife was hot at the time. So that was great. Yeah.
Look at Billy,
so
that's
fantastic.
kind of a big victory.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. It was. They still don't care a damn about what I say, but at least
no. But maybe this is the beginning of credibility with that generation where the aesthetics matter more than the substance. Maybe the substance will catch up.
I doubt it, but
they'll be like, "Dad may know some stuff. Maybe Dad was cool once."
Maybe, yeah. It's
that's also tough for the kids to wrap their mind around, the idea that Dad knew people and had friends and stuff. Where they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." Listen, I get it. I'm amazed as you are that happened, but there it is.
There was a band my youngest daughter was listening to the other day in a room, and I'm like, "Yeah." I go, when they released their first album, I went and played miniature golf with them. She goes, "What? I'm like, yeah, they were just younger. They're breaking in, and I was in the industry, and they didn't have anything to do. So we went out and we drank a little bit and played drunk miniature golf." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Was it Big Head Todd and the Monsters?
No, it was 311. The band.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of big.
Yeah. Kind of had fun with them. It was when their first album Homebrewed come out, and they were doing some.
Have you ever thought of reaching out for a rematch or anything like that?
No, I've actually, when they were touring up through, I'd say probably about 8-10 years ago, every once in a while we would connect. I'd send some emails to the manager, and I'd go and I'd get to see the show, and I'd hang out with them a little bit. But yeah, they were nice guys. So it was one of those crazy things where like, we were both stupid together. High five thing. Yeah. So
one of us is famous now.
Exactly.
The other one's you.
Yeah, the other one's me. Yeah, so it's kind of nice.
Did you get a chance to watch any of the championship football games?
Yes, I did. I spent about half the game watching the 49ers Eagles, but once you lost the last quarterback, the fourth string, you're like, ooh, this is not going to go well.
It didn't feel like a real game after they lost Purdy. I mean, I thought, even right after they lost Purdy, they marched down the field. They ended up tying it up because of McCaffrey 7-7. And I thought, man, if Purdy could come back, it'd be a legit game. This could be legit. But once you lose all your quarterbacks, and you've got at one point Christian McCaffrey, who Graham and I are rooting to come on and take it on because we want the Hollywood story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Valor connection for right here, local kid. But once that happens, it changes the dynamic entirely. You make the defense do way more than they needed to do. And they were pretty good for a while.
Yeah.
And the offense is inept. They can't seem to get down the field. It didn't feel like a fair matchup. I mean, I don't care about
if you were a 49er fan, that would felt unfair. Because it felt like they had tied one, if not both of your hands behind your back.
Oh my gosh.
And then said, "Come play with some of the best." And that was
very tough.
Was hard.
Yeah, and then
the Chiefs one.
That Chiefs game is a heartbreaker. I despise the Chiefs. I mean, I'm just so sick. Listen,
it's a division thing. I have to hate them.
Yeah,
I do.
But let me be clear. I think Patrick Mahomes is one of the most amazing quarterbacks the NFL's ever produced. There's no question in my mind. This dude, if he stays healthy, is going to be right up there with Manning and Brady and I get it. I'm just so sick of the Mahomes to Kelsey connection. And I'm just so sick of the Chiefs and Arrowhead. And so to watch Joe Burrow get in there, when they tied it up in the fourth, I thought, this is going to happen. They're going to do it again. They're going to break all the hearts of those Arrowhead fans. And I'm just going to lap up all of those sweet tears. Just
exactly. They're going to be delicious.
And then somehow those last 2 drives that the Bengals put together, and I use that phrase very lightly, just awful. Awful.
Yeah, they were absolutely awful. I was a Cincinnati fan yesterday. I've got a good friend of mine that lives in Cincinnati. Huge Bengals fan. So for him, I was cheering, and I'm happy to cheer against a divisional opponent for the Broncos at any point in time. So I'll be happy to join your bandwagon at any point and yell and scream with you. So I was a huge Cincinnati Bengals fan yesterday. And again, I have huge respect for Patrick Mahomes. He is an amazing quarterback. But we have to stop pretending, please, when we're doing TV commentary, that he is the greatest person to ever lace up his cleats and put a helmet on. Because, and we talked about it earlier, that there was that play near the end where Patrick Mahomes runs, and the Cincinnati Bengal makes a horrible decision and gets out of bounds and pushes
unnecessary.
Yeah, there's no reason to put your hands on him. You push him, and of course, in this day and age in the NFL, that is roughing the passer.
If you cough on the passer, it's roughing the passer.
So you're roughing the quarterback. He's not very good. And so it was a Cincinnati penalty. And now they get an additional 15 yards added at the end. And the commentator's like, what an amazing run. I cannot believe that Patrick Mahomes, with his hurt ankle, was able to take the team on his back and hurl them forward to. And I'm thinking there going, you moron. I just saw a dude get a 15-yard penalty. If they don't get that 15-yard penalty,
that was the game. That penalty was the game.
It's a 7-yard run, and then Kansas City has a difficult decision to make. But because the penalty, first down changes everything. But that's not what they talk about. They sit there and they go, Patrick Mahomes, shut up. I'm tired of it.
I know.
I mean, again, great player, but stop giving him all of the credit. He doesn't get all of it, okay?
No.
Not all of it.
Texters, by the way, and we love to get the text, and let me just do the recap here of this. You can reach out to us a bunch of different ways. One is you can do it through the email from the app or the website. I just get to that less frequently, honestly. But if you hit me with the text, for folks that have been texting into the show, and you guys do in truckloads every day, you know that I read many of them on the air, and I respond to most of them if I can. So we've already had some texts here, 2 that are of note for us, Billy. One is, comment on the NFL thing. The officiating crews were too involved in both games. I do think that was true. I thought there were some plays where even the expert guy that comes on and says, even he was like, that's technically this, but that was light. Then another texter has come in to say that if you're watching us on YouTube, what you'll notice is Billy is identified as me, and I'm identified as you, Billy.
I like that. Can we switch paychecks?
Yeah. Well, listen, we're getting closer and closer to parity every single day. And for folks listening, that is not necessarily a good thing for Billy or
not
me.
For either of us.
No, not for either of us.
It's not a good thing.
But you can also watch us on the YouTube, which is a big deal. Go out to the YouTube, do the subscription thing. Mark Crowley, who is our IT genius guy, he has assured us that once we eclipse 1,000 subscribers, and we're right on the doorstep of it, you could be close. Part of that. Everyone gets a free car.
Yeah.
And I mean, including you. Yep. You all get a free car. I don't know how he Oprah Winfrey's that thing, but it sounds like it's going to happen.
I think they're Matchbox or Lego, but still, it's details. It's in the fine print.
I did not want to leave the segment, by the way, because you teased me with a couple different things media related. One, you saw a movie that you liked, but two, there were 2 other things that you watched that were sort of unexpectedly good.
It was a movie and a TV show. So I had an adventure in storytelling this weekend, and it was absolutely phenomenal because I love good storytelling, and both of these things came out of nowhere for me. I wish earlier in my career that I had this person, it's very influential in my radio side of my career, explain to me that it's not enough to just find the right story, that you have to know how to tell it. Because they said the creativity is in finding the right story. That's your job, to go out there and find the story and figure out what you're going to do. And even if it's something in the family, what is that story you can tell on the radio? But the artistry comes in how you tell it. That's the pure part of the art form. And I wish I would have figured that out earlier in my career. And that's what I ran across this weekend. The first was a birthday celebration for my mom. Happy birthday, Mom, if you're listening. Love you. Had a lot of fun over the weekend. We went and did movie and dinner. And I always suggest that. Don't do dinner and a movie, because then what the hell do you talk about during dinner? You do movie and dinner, you got something to talk about. So always do it that way. So we did that.
Wait a minute, dinner after the movie?
Absolutely. Always do dinner after the movie.
That's so interesting.
Because then you got stuff to talk about. You
Normally,
have especially
yeah,
dating.
listen, I haven't been doing the right thing because
Yeah.
normally we're eating and then you get in those recliner chairs and it's,
no.
it's nappy time, honestly.
Yeah, it also cuts down on the amount of food that you will consume during the movie, so it'll save you some money.
Well, I don't want that.
But you're eating afterwards.
I need the refillable bucket of popcorn, Billy.
Yeah, you can still do that, but you don't have to do the snow caps and you don't have to do the Raisinets and you don't have to sneak in the dots and so
the goobers.
Yeah, the goobers.
Do they still do goobers?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, goobers and Raisinets. So peanuts and raisins. So the movie is, and this is what my mom wanted to see. She hadn't been to the theater for 4 years. And she said, I'd really like the experience of going back to the theater. So we're like, okay, great. What do you want to see? And she says, I want to see the new Tom Hanks film. And we went, oh, I've seen a little bit of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's a film called It's a Man Named Otto. That's the name of it. And it is absolutely unexpectedly phenomenal.
Really?
I would do whatever you can to go out there and see it because of the amazing storytelling. It comes out of nowhere. And the premise is that Tom Hanks is a man who has recently, in the last 6 months, lost his wife. That's the love of his life. And he's dealing with the rest of the world. And he's decided that his life is basically over. All the good is done. So he has become the grumpiest, most Karen individual you have ever seen on the planet. He is mad at everybody and he is going to point it out. And it is hilarious to see because he's got this, Hanks is such a good actor. He can just portray the emotion through facial, his face.
You're certain this isn't a movie about Adam Schiff?
I know. It could have been. It really could have been. And then what happens is across the street moves in this family. And the wife is this bundle of sunshine that just cannot be ignored. And she calls him on his BS. And she just to his face. There's one point early in the movie, and I'm not going to break anything. Early in the movie, the first time that she really has a conversation with him, she asks him, are you always this unfriendly? Just to his face. Yeah. And he's like, I'm not unfriendly. And she goes, oh, no, you're not unfriendly. Every word you say is like a warm cuddle. I mean, she's just sarcastic to call him on his crap. And he slowly melts. And there's some other relationships in there that crack the glacier as well. And then where he ends up and what he becomes, it is remarkable. And this is how good it is. Okay. Out of my 4 kids, all 4 laughed out loud openly in the theater, which is, again, not that
during
unusual.
The movie.
Yeah. 3 of them sobbing. Absolutely in full tears. 2 of them tears pouring down their face.
Which one of them didn't and why?
My oldest, Max, he's on that type of the tears. He's a little bit harder of a nut to crack on this angle. Yeah. So movies and stuff like that, he doesn't cry as much. He laughs and he gets into them. He's more sentimental. He will cry on personal stories and individual things with you, but the stories on the TV doesn't hit him quite as hard. He said he got close, but he didn't get there. But so when I've got 3 teenagers going to a movie about an old grumpy man and they end up in tears, it's a special movie. I would say do what you can to go see it, or at least, when it hits streaming, go and stream it. You will not
listen. Honestly, you're the
Yeah.
second person who has given me that recommendation.
I would not miss it.
That's a big one.
And the second one, this came out of absolutely nowhere. Had seen the promos for this new TV show on Peacock. And I'm like, that's kind of interesting. And then my wife decided, because she likes to explore a lot of the new TV programs, and she started streaming this one and saw the first episode. And she comes down, and she goes, you got to see this. I'm like, no, what? And she goes, this. And I saw the promos for that. And so then I went and I watched an episode with her, and I went, oh, daddy likey. Well, it's amazing. And then we introduced our kids to it. And our kids are like, this is damn good. In fact, we stopped. This is how good it is. In order to watch the final episode that's out right now, there are only 4 episodes that have been released. In order to watch the 4th episode, we stopped watching the Eagles 49ers game because it was getting out of hand.
What?
Once McCaffrey came in, we were like, nope, we're going in.
Pull the wrapper off this thing, man.
This show is on Peacock, and it is called Poker Face. Okay?
Poker Face.
Poker Face. Yeah, not necessarily a great descriptor about
not
what it is.
Not the Lady Gaga thing.
No, not the Lady Gaga thing. It stars Natasha Lyonne, who has done a number of things, but everybody will be most familiar with her being in the American Pie movies. She was kind of the high energy girl with the kind of curlyish blonde hair and kind of the raspy voice. That's who she was. She's really good. And the fun part about this is how I'll describe it to you. There's kind of a little bit of a something that you have to buy into. There's something that Natasha Lyonne has the ability to do, and you have to buy into that. Once you're into that, you go run. And the idea of this, it's written and executive produced by Rian Johnson, who people will know did 2 of the Star Wars movies, most recently Knives Out.
Is it Ryan or Rian?
I think it's Rian Johnson, I think.
Is
it?
Could
be Ryan, I don't know.
I think it's Ryan, and I say that only because I listened to Smartless, and I think they called him that. But anyway.
Could be Ryan Johnson too. I have no idea. I'm just doing it based on phonetically, what it would look like. But so he's the one. This is the executive producer, and Knives Out is the most closest as far as the presentation, as far as the artistry. And imagine this: the story is basically if you had someone inspired by Quentin Tarantino writing an episodic TV show that is based on the narrative storytelling of both Kung Fu and Columbo. That's the
Kung
base.
Fu and Columbo.
Yes, that's
the
base.
Like your chocolates and my peanut butter in the early days.
Here's the reason why is it's an episodic TV show, and the main character is basically walking the earth. There's a reason for that happens in the first that this person has to get the hell out of Vegas, or the mob is going to come kill her. And that's the premise for this. And you learn the whole thing in the first episode. It's fantastic. So now she has to avoid the mob. So she's trying to stay off the grid, and she's going across, the country, and she stops in these little tiny towns and areas around the country while she's trying to avoid the bad guys. And she has these interactions. And she ends up 9 times out of 10 solving things like murders and crime. But again, she's not a policeman. And it has to do with the fact that she's pretty much, she's a human lie detector. She just can tell when someone's lying to him. She can't tell what everything is the truth. She just knows.
Poker skills.
Yeah,
that's what she
just knows when someone's lying to her. And that's the basic thing. So once you get that, the premise goes forward. But here's the storytelling. At the storytelling, the beginning part of the show is the crime. So you see the crime.
Now I'm writing it down.
After the beginning, you go back in time and you see normally when she arrives in the town, and then the build from there.
All right.
And they're all these little tiny,
and that's on Peacock.
Yeah. And the best part about it is, so it's the Kung Fu narrative round, but it's the Columbo narrative storytelling where you find the crime at the beginning. And then the Columbo, she's really good at this. She wanders around and she asks all these questions, but she's not asking accusatory questions. It's definitely a Columbo thing where she's like, she'll sit there and say, okay, I've been figuring, I've been thinking about this. You said this, but what about that?
Yeah.
What happened here? Can you explain this to me? And then and she just asks these questions and get these people in these situations. And there are portions where she sits there and she'll go, wait a minute, that's weird. Because you just said this to me, but I know you're telling the truth. And this guy said that earlier, and I know that he was lying to me. And so she can, and it's, once you buy into that, and they do
I'm going to have to watch that. And of course, the reference to Columbo, where you can find the old Columbo series, worth watching. They're still very, very good. And what a blast from the past. Everything is shag carpet. But you're right. There's always that scene. Yeah. It looks like the bad guy, Robert Conrad has outsmarted him. And then right at the end, he turns and asks that one question with the cigar in his hand, touching his head as he's walking out the door. He goes, "There's just one more thing."
Yeah, just one more thing.
Just one more question.
Yeah.
And it ends up unraveling all that. So I have to watch that.
That's what she does. She does that over and over again. She goes, wait a minute, I got one more question. And it's fantastic.
Before we cut away for a well-deserved break here, I should tell you another texter has come in. You and I forgot about this part, but this is legit. How about the call after the Bengals stopped the Chiefs' third down, and instead of punting, the Chiefs were given a free replay by the officials?
Yeah.
That was out. That was the game.
Ridiculous.
That was outrageous. But for that play, there is no Mahomes run, and there is no penalty. That was, and
that's
it's true.
Right.
Zach Taylor went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on the sidelines, and rightfully so.
That was crap.
If you're a Bengals fan, you're certain the fix is in. Because every single human being on the field, in the stadium, and watching the game believed that play actually happened. And then that ref goes, "I was waving an arm."
Yeah.
Or something like, you're the only person who didn't believe the play was actually going on.
Everybody else participated as if it was
even the
going
Chiefs
on.
Ran off the field like, gosh darn it, we missed it. And then it was like, wait, what? I'm sorry?
What? Yeah.
Freebie?
That was ridiculous.
It was very, and actually it was more aggravated for me than the whole claim about the Buffs and their fifth down against Missouri all those years ago. That was a different thing. But nonetheless, we're going to get to all the texts. There's more here that keep coming in. We'll get to those. But the best thing for you is, as the listener, is that when we come back after the first segment, we go feet first right into the good stuff. And that is the Thorpe Report, where Billy makes us smarter about the news of the day. And then we get all dumbed down again with You Choose the News. Stick around. George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. Wow, that was a close one. It's me, Dr. Feelgood, right here, George Brockler on the George Show. 710 KNUS, lots of text coming through. So thank you for doing that. By the way, keep doing the YouTube thing. Pretty pleased with free cars for everyone on top. This is our buddy Alexa, Love Columbo. When we go up to the mountains with my parents, I bring the Columbo DVDs for us to watch. I love watching the old Columbo, man. That's a good one. Before the dog, before he starts bringing the dog around. It's wonderful. The Bengals sold with that unnecessary roughness call. Also, Puss in Boots was also really good and funny. That's what I was going to say. We didn't talk about the movie. Jeff and Graham and I, Trey didn't want to go. Jeff and Graham and I went and saw Puss in Boots because Jeff said, hey, I think it's going to be really good. Trey said, I don't want to go see a kid's movie. Jeff said, it's not a kid's movie. It's not really a kid's movie. It's got great writing, super funny. Antonio Banderas does the voice. Salma Hayek does the other voice. And there's some other, John Mulaney's in there as Jack Horner. I mean, honestly, it's funny. I laughed out loud. I thought it was really good movie. So there's that thing right there. Cincinnati got the ball back after the play. The refs said did not count. My question, by the way, please tell me you're not defending the chefs because there won't be any of that on this show.
Yeah, none.
My question from Jump, the white cop tasered Tyree. Shouldn't he also be charged? I know what you're talking about. Nichols. Yeah. Listen, we've got some sound for that. We'll do that later in the show. We'll talk about Tyre Nichols. And so you can stick around and ask your question. Then the short answer is, based at least on the limited information I've seen about that guy, no. What would he be charged with? The guy that when they tased him initially, when he took off and rabbited out of there, I don't see that guy on the hook for anything related to this dude's death at all, but maybe I'm missing something. I'd love to have that conversation when we get there, but we've got to get to it right now. I've got to turn the controls over as long as the FCC will permit me to do that for the two good things that Billy does in the morning that are all production related. After this, it's just a slow, really just trying to keep Billy awake. But these are the two most exciting parts. Billy, it's the Thorpe Report, and you choose the news.
Yes, and then it's nappy time. We are very excited.
Boom.
Yes. So good morning, sir. Well, look for another day of gray skies, occasional snow, and very, very cold temperatures today. Bundle up if you're headed outside. Tuesday, we're going to see more sunshine, warmer temperatures, maybe even slightly above freezing, but no promises. The trend will continue right into the weekend. Expect dry conditions with highs warming to the 40s by Thursday, and then it'll be in the 40s and 50s by the weekend. Today, mostly cloudy, occasional light snow. A high is going to be only around 9 degrees. It'll be partly cloudy, very cold tonight. We'll get to around 0 to maybe 3 below overnight, then start to warm up tomorrow. Highs around 33, getting to 39 by Wednesday. There are more than 24 schools, businesses, and offices across Colorado that are on a delayed start, remote start, or even closed on Monday due to the frigid temperatures. What? We, however, are not one of them.
Wait. Is Douglas County one?
Well, we're going to go. I have a partial list.
Yay!
Aurora Public Schools, Jeffco, Elizabeth, Strasburg, Manitou, Lewis, Palmer, Canyon City. So no. Jeffco's
you know what happened,
in there.
Billy, is we freaked out Douglas. Last time, remember they shut down the schools. We had the superintendent on.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, kids. There will be no more delayed starts or days off for the rest of the year.
Thanks to the George Show, yes.
So sorry.
Yes, we have done our job. Yes, you guys are soft anyway.
Sorry.
The police in Wheat Ridge are investigating a shooting of a truck driver during a possible altercation on I-70. This happened on Sunday morning. Incident occurred around 8 in the morning, westbound I-70 near the Ward Road exit. Ward Road off-ramp was closed for the investigation. Police said the driver of a semi-tractor trailer was shot, but is expected to be okay. Very few details have been released, and police are asking for help, which makes it very difficult with the few details. At least 2 businesses were damaged after gunfire erupted outside Colorado Mills Mall on Saturday night. No injuries reported. No arrests have been made. Lakewood police responded to the mall located off of West Colfax and I-70. They're about 7:45 in the evening. Officers arrived at the shopping center. Individuals were seen fleeing the area. Suspects no longer on the scene, police said in a news release. And the police determined it was an isolated incident between 2 groups of people exiting the mall, and it led to an exchange of gunfire. Nobody was struck, which again doesn't make me feel super safe.
Do you know that is not even the first time that kind of thing has happened? There was, I'm going back 15, 20 years now in Jeffco again, which is where this happened. By the way, Colorado Mills, a stone's throw from the courthouse. But in Southwest Plaza, same thing. 2 guys are mean mugging each other in the mall. One group gets out of the mall first. Another group throws the door open and makes a crashing noise against the wall. Other group turns around, of course, gun in hand. Triggers are pulled. People get shot. It's just, I don't know what's going on with people, but we have to thin them right out of the herd.
Yeah, I can't figure out. I'm like, listen, you're at the mall. What exactly is going to partake between you and a couple other individuals at the mall that is going to require gunfire?
They got the last Bed Bath & Beyond bath bomb or something?
They didn't share the churro? I mean, what the hell?
Yeah,
guys,
I don't know.
It's seriously, people. Oh, well. Backlash over more inclusive curriculum has led to an ugly school board meeting and threats against the Summit County School District earlier in the month. Superintendent said that he will not back down, though, in his support of the LGBTQ social studies standards that are coming. Public comment at a January school board meeting devolved at times into finger-pointing, yelling, insults, because, they're adults. Summit School District Board of Education passed a measure last fall to encourage the state to include representation of LGBTQ people in their new social studies curriculum. In particular, they just want inclusion and contributions of LGBTQ people into the school curriculums from kindergarten through 12th grade. So last week, a 26-year-old was charged with felony menacing because he posted threats against the teachers and staff on social media over this very curriculum. However, Summit has no option but to implement this curriculum because the state school board has adopted the new standards. So people are mad at them for implementing the new standards, and they don't have any choice, but they have to do it. You're yelling at the wrong people, you morons. But that's, kind of de rigueur for what we do.
I guess I'd be interested to at least see, how do you incorporate the LGBTQ thing into the kindergarten curriculum? What does that look like?
Yeah, the first through third, I think, is weird. I just, what is that going to look like?
Middle school, maybe high school. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'm just interested to know what it is. Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I keep thinking of the history and things you're teaching the kids at that, and I just, where does that fit in? I'm not saying they can't be there. I'm just looking at, we're hitting highlights at that point. We're not. Or
is it just deep. To tell people things like, Alexander the Great was gay?
Yeah,
or something. I mean, is that what it is? Abraham Lincoln.
Hey, that Julius Caesar guy walked around on a towel. He has to be gay. Yeah. The horse that has stood watch over the Denver Broncos stadium since 1975 is once again on the move. Bucky the Bronco was lifted by crane this Saturday from atop the south stands at Empower Field in Mile High. Why? Well, because the 27-foot tall fiberglass horse is just going to be moved temporary as part of a $100 million upgrade that the Broncos Stadium is undergoing this offseason. The horse is going to be added back to the top of the scoreboard after the video screen is revamped and redone. The video screen itself is going to actually double in height. By the start of the NFL season in August, the Broncos' main video board will rank as the fourth largest single scoreboard in an NFL stadium. It will be 72 feet high and 225 feet wide.
Imagine what all of those punts will look like on that big screen. That is going to be impressive.
And watching all those sacks, it'll be fantastic.
Yeah. The thing that bums me out about it, Billy, is that tells me we're not getting a new stadium, and I'm anxious to create SoFi Aurora here pretty quickly. Like, let's get out of Denver, allow people to have better parking and a safer drive. Yeah, but we're not there yet.
No, we're not. And just as a reminder, Bucky the Bronco was modeled after Trigger, the famous horse in the Roy Rogers Western films.
What?
So, yeah. And that is our trigger. Aha, see what I did there? See?
Now you're trigger.
Yes, it is time for the most ridiculous part of the morning show. Yes, it is time for You Choose the News, where we have scoured the interwebs all weekend, at least as far as you know, to find ridiculous stories and then give them stupid headlines because we get to play this fake radio news game. Yes, sir, it is that time again. Are you prepared?
No.
Here come your headlines.
You can never be prepared.
Headline number 1. Urinal surprise. Headline number 2, Satan at the Super Bowl. Headline number 2, kitty confusion. And headline number 3 was Magic Mike and Striptease Steve already taken. All righty, sir. Here are your choices again. Headline number 1, urinal surprise. Headline number 2, Satan at the Super Bowl. Headline number 3, kitty confusion. And headline number 4 were Magic Mike and Striptease Steve already taken.
These are all very good ones, but I'm a big cake fan, so let's go with urinal surprise.
Urinal surprise. Well, here we are going to go all the way across the pond to merry old England and the scene at the Cambridge Circus. Yes, recently there was a dramatic rescue effort at a junction between Shaftesbury Avenue and Charing Cross Road because crews were sent there. There was a man that was in desperate need of help. Fire crews used a winch to release him, but despite the efforts, he did not make it. The Met Police announced that they have notified the man's next of kin, and it's going to be somewhat of an awkward funeral because he was crushed after he was trapped underneath a telescopic urinal.
What?
Yeah,
what's a telescopic urinal?
My question exactly. I had to do some really weird searching this weekend to figure out what this is. See, now basically this guy was doing some work on what they have in London now, in and around, and they're called telescopic urinals. What it is when the sun go down, the urinal come up. that they were tired of having homeless people wandering around the street, just, relieving themselves wherever they want to. And also, young 20-somethings wandering home from the bar and think, hey, I can just drain the weasel right here. So they actually now around the city have pop-up urinals. They're called telescoping urinals that pop up at night. And he was working on them. And unfortunately, the mechanism went a little bad. He was underneath and working on it, and it went down and smushed him.
A urinal went down on a guy and killed him.
Yes, exactly. So which again is going to make it really awkward at the funeral.
Before you get to the next story, just to throw this out here,
yes.
I told you the text that someone said Puss in Boots was really good.
Yes.
It was Graham. He just texted me on my phone and said, hey, I just texted into the
fantastic.
show.
Oh.
I don't know what to make of the fact that we have a 13-year-old listener.
That is fantastic.
In the 6 o'clock hour. That's crazy.
I do have to question his lifestyle choices.
At this point, Graham, I love you, buddy, but
and I'm worried about you.
That's
I'm
impressive.
Concerned. I'm very concerned about
if he starts commenting on the political stuff, then I'll know I've broken a sweet boy.
Exactly.
Sorry.
He still has so much joy and happiness.
I know. He still loves people.
Yes, I know. Why would we do this to him? Oh, okay. So your second choice this morning, sir. Satan and at the Super Bowl, Kitty Confusion, or were Magic Mike and Striptease Steve taken?
Oh, Magic Mike.
Magic Mike and Striptease Steve. Yes, this weekend, it was the WWE Royal Rumble. Cody Rhodes gets a shot at the WrestleMania Championship. Rhea Ripley also gets her shot after winning the Women's Rumble. But the story and the talk were about the brand new tag team between Sheamus and Drew McIntyre. Yes, just shortly, about a week or so ago, the Irish King, Sheamus, along with Drew McIntyre, the Scottish Savage, formed a brand new tag team. And this is impressive. In fact, they made their debut right before the Royal Rumble last Friday. They were wrestling against the Viking Raiders. Yes, it was a continuous brawl. Sheamus hit Eric with his white noise, and then Ivar with a suplex. Drew then hits Ivar with the Future Shock DDT before the Celtic Warrior picks up the win by hitting Ivar with the Brogue Kick.
No clue what you're saying.
All of the noise was really about the name for the tag team. Yes. The WWE had decided to name the tag team of Sheamus and Drew the Banger Brothers.
What?
Yes, the Banger Brothers. They're not always that good at making up the names, but what I don't know, until I guess I would say a 20-something intern told them, hey, guys, there's this website out there where they do porn. And they're called the Bang Brothers. So this may not be a good thing.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. Yes, there is a film company out there called Bang Brothers, and they do lots and lots and lots and lots of porn.
Oh no.
They now are dropping the name Banger Brothers because, again, if they had printed the T-shirts, I'd be buying a T-shirt today.
I suppose the listeners will also take note that this story came right after I announced my 13-year-old was listening to the show.
I'm just saying it. Just
don't know what judgment is being exhibited here.
Poor judgment.
Just remember.
Yes.
Turn off the radio.
Yes. And your final choice this morning is Satan at the Super Bowl or Kitty Confusion?
Satan at the Super Bowl.
Satan is coming to the Super Bowl. At least that's the theory of a priest named Gerald Johnson. See, Priest Johnson suffered a heart attack, and he claims to have died for some time. But it was shocking what happened while he had passed. Per a report in New Music Express, Gerald Johnson spoke of a place on the other side. He said that he thought originally, because of all of his good deeds and the fact that, he's a priest, that he would be experiencing the happiness and ever-loving joy in the afterlife of heaven. But he was surprised when he had to go in the elevator and head straight down. Yes. Yes. Gerald Johnson says instead of getting his heavenly reward, he was sent to hell. And that's when things became interesting. He says, yes, when he was there, it was the music that was playing that shocked him the most.
Was he in Cleveland?
He said they were playing Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy was being played by the Demons. And then he said it got even worse when they all started singing and dancing to Rihanna's Umbrella Song.
What?
Yes. He said
hallucinogenic
besides hearing Rihanna's Umbrella Song being played by the Demons, he was able to give a vivid detail of the things that he saw there. He saw a man walking on all fours like a dog that was being burned from head to toe. His eyes were bulging, and worse than that, he was wearing chains around his neck. He was a hellhound. And as for Rihanna, she swears she is not a demon And the global sensation has left her fans devoid of songs for 6 years, but finally this year, she did release the song Lift Me Up. It's actually quite good. It's in the Marvel film Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and she will be performing at the Super Bowl. So then again, if you are going to the Super Bowl, obviously Satan is going to be present. So George and I are accepting all of your Super Bowl tickets because we do not want you. We care about you
just
that
based
much.
Off of the teams,
you
honestly.
should not be exposed to that type of evil. We will suffer through the evil for you.
Eagles,
we are happy
Chiefs,
to.
yeah,
that's the
demonic
kind of commitment we make to you, the listening public. We will endure the evil in your stead. So just send the tickets here, and we'll take care of it for you. We'll even send you some pictures.
It's hard to imagine that matchup is even a sellout, but we'll see. I suppose there'll be some people that care about that game.
Yeah, speaking of sellouts. Oh, yes, that's it. That is the end of today's Radio News Game Show. You choose the news. We didn't have a sponsor today because I got here late. I know. I didn't open the email. And so there could be some money sitting right over there on that screen there, and I don't know where it is yet. So hopefully they'll be back tomorrow. All right, back to you, sir.
Remember to email Billy with your sponsorship offers. That's how we keep this thing going. Nothing here is for free except the employees, as you know. Listen, we're going to cut away for a quick break. We'll come back, and in the moments left, we'll tee up the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock hours. Lots to talk about. A lot of stuff in the news, and love to get your feedback on it. The texts have already been pouring in here. Just keep them coming. And then check out that ridiculous YouTube channel that we got going on right now. You will love it or hate it, but either way, subscribe to it. George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brockler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. Thank you to Billy for putting together that wonderful segment. Of course, we have a limited amount of time before you're going to start to hear the music play again, exiting us from the 6 o'clock hour. But that means right afterwards, we go into hour 2. That's the 7 o'clock hour. And we have a special guest. His name is David A. Smith. He is a professor. You probably heard him before on Pete. He used to be on Pete. I think that's the first place I ever heard him. He is a professor out of Baylor. Baylor is in Texas. Beyond that, there's not much more I can tell you. But there is that AI that's out there, that ChatGPT. I don't know what it means. My son Jeff has goofed around with it. But I've been reading some articles, maybe you have as well, talking about how this thing, and I don't even think it's self-aware yet, is able to start generating original works, including essays that get decent grades from other institutions on things like, history and the social sciences and the economics and all this other stuff. It generates them. And the question is, what impact is this thing going to have on the future? Now, it's frozen in time because it hasn't been allowed to gather up any more new information, I think, since 2021. But it is fascinating. And we're going to talk with someone who's in the professorial, if that's the right word, trenches. And that's David A. Smith from Baylor. We're going to hear more about this when we come back. Stick around. Very, very interesting. It is the future. Where was this when I was in high school? George Brockler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brocco right back with you here in the saddle for hour 2 of 4 at 10. Charlie Kirk, 11. Prager, 1. Gorka, 3. We come right back to Live and Local right here in Denver, and that's with Deb Flora. If you haven't listened to Deb's show, you need to do that from 3 to 4. That is a quick hour if you've ever paid attention. Got a lot of good information there. And then, of course, our friend Stephen Tubbs from 4 to 7. Was a little bit jealous of Stephen getting to sit down in studio with my buddy Danielle Jurinsky from the Aurora City Council, but it was a great interview. If you haven't had a chance to do it, go back and listen to that Friday podcast. On the line with us right now to discuss something that is taking place more and more in the classroom. I think it's going to be everywhere. And that is this Chat GPT, artificial intelligence. I don't know what you call it, a website, a device, a software, something, but where college students are out there generating what are purported to be these high quality essays. And I've read a bunch of articles on this stuff right now, and there's varying opinions on it. And we were hoping to go right to the well. And that is with a voice you have heard a ton on Pete's show, and hopefully you'll hear a ton on this show as well. And that is David A. Smith, a professor of history from the University of Baylor. Or is it Baylor University? Is it the U of B or just BU, Professor?
It's just BU.
Baylor University. And for those folks, and by the way, as we announced you're going to be on the show, you should know a bunch of texters texted in and say, we love the professor. He was one of our favorites with Pete. So you should know the bar set pretty high here. But
I get some emails every once in a while from your listeners, and I just love them. You've got such a good audience.
Inheriting from Pete was incredible. But for those folks that have not yet heard about you or can't remember the interviews you did with Pete, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'm from Texas originally. I teach history here at Baylor, American history. I grew up in Texas. I got my undergrad at LBJ alma mater, what is today Texas State, what was back then Southwest Texas. I got my PhD at Missouri in contemporary U.S. history. After that, I got a gig in North Carolina teaching for about 4 years, and then came back to Texas with this position here, and I've been here ever since.
Where's the accent?
Pardon?
Where's your accent? I mean, people heard you say you are a Texas guy, and I imagine they're listening for the drawl.
I know, that's right. I don't really have one. I don't think I've ever had one, although my aunt in Missouri says that she can hear an accent.
Okay, well, Missouri, what can you do? The show me state. Now, Professor, tell us a little bit about when you're a history professor. I presume that for you to grade the performance of students in your classes, there's a lot of written material. I mean, do you do it the old-fashioned way, which is when probably you and I did it with like blue books and stuff? Do you remember that? Or is it all online now? Is it typed? What goes on?
Let's see. I have them write papers. They write papers, and they, on a WordPress, they submit them. They don't turn in hard copies of papers anymore. But as far as tests go, exams, they take those in the classroom on paper. And I don't want to give that up. Sometimes I have them write in a blue book. Sometimes I give them paper with questions on it. But for what we're talking about here with this Chat GPT,
yes,
it's out of class work that you have to be attuned to. If you're suspecting they're going to cheat.
Do you suspect your students, like when you start, let's say day one, you sit down, there's probably a code of conduct at Baylor like there is at every university. But do you specifically address with them now in light of things like Chat GPT, or even, I don't know how you treat Grammarly. Grammarly is a website that's out there that will go and correct your many grammatical errors and make suggestions. Do you treat that as cheating as well? And what do you tell the students in advance of a test or an assignment?
Well, first of all, when I talk to them about cheating on day one, I honestly, this is going to sound old-fashioned. It's going to sound, optimistic. I make a moral case against it. I say that, look, I'm going to be telling you a story here full of information that it will change you if you learn it. And I'm going to do my best to make it live for you, and I don't want you to ever forget it. And if you cheat, it sounds cheesy, doesn't it? You're cheating yourself. And I don't want you to miss out on this, so don't cheat. I'm not going to presume that you're going to cheat, but they know about software like Turnitin.com that will, they'll take a paper and it'll look for pieces that have been lifted from other sources. I just make a moral case against it. And I say, if you don't know a question, if you don't know an answer, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't know half the answers to every question I'm asked. But if you cheat, there's something, wrong inside. It's harder to fix that.
Let's talk pre-chat GPT. When you have, I presume you've been doing this now, 20 plus years as a PhD. I presume you have caught kids cheating before. What does it look like when they do it?
Well, nowadays, when students submit a paper, they submit it through a service called turnitin.com.
Even if it's written, even if it's handwritten, or is that just the test you do?
Oh, no. That's if it's handwritten, it's just me and the student in the paper.
Okay.
And if it's handwritten, like in class, they don't handwrite it at home. But if it's handwritten in class, they're not going to have a chance to cheat because I'm going to be watching them like a hawk.
Amen.
But if they turn in a paper online, like a book review, there's the program that it runs through that goes out and it finds chunks of text that exist on the web out there already, including in this service's database. So it has millions of papers to look through, including, my students' old papers. So it picks up listed chunks. But what this chat GPT does is it generates things fresh. So there aren't key phrases that a software program would recognize as existing out there somewhere.
So it's like original writing.
It is, it's original writing.
Well, how do you, as someone who wants to make sure that the product you're getting from the student is really a product from the student, how do you tackle that? Well, that's the challenge. And you remember when you and I were in school, you could pay people to write your papers. There was a black market for people who would actually write your English paper or your history paper for you. It's true. And I just want to take this moment, by the way, to apologize to all those people that gave me money because I got them nothing but C's. Well, if they had paid more, you would have gotten them a B. That's right. But you sort of have to, it's almost like being a musician. You have to sort of have an ear for what sounds right and what sounds natural, and you have to sort of be attuned to the little clues that most students wouldn't have in their paper, clues of tone, agreement, stuff like that. There's just between you and me, there's really no way to surely get around it. Oh my goodness, that's tough. So here's a quote from an article here. It's an Insider, businessinsider.com article, and they're talking about the exact topic you and I are, Doctor. And it says there's a Dr. Leah Henriksen, who's a lecturer at the University of Leeds. And she says that she thinks that artificial intelligence, if used carefully, might make education fairer. Here's the quote: "I think there's a lot of potential for helping people express themselves in ways that they hadn't necessarily thought about. This could be particularly useful for students who speak English as a second language or for students who aren't used to the academic writing style." I have no idea what she's talking about when using the chat GPT, but do you see it as a potential benefit? I mean, what's the positive of having this kind of AI out there for the academician? Yeah, I've thought about that for a long time. I had a talk over the weekend with a couple of colleagues of mine, and one teaches in the sciences, and he was actually sort of, excited about this because it could help him build syllabuses or syllabi. It could help him write questions. It could help him do things that a professor needs to do. And I can sort of understand that, but from where I am, and maybe from where you are too, my worry outpaces my optimism that this could be useful, because I see it only, that's my failing, I guess. I see it only as a way of sort of cheating. I think it's cheating too. It definitely feels like plagiarism because it's the words of another, but not another person. Can you plagiarize AI? I don't know. Well, I mean, it's almost beyond plagiarism. It's like the AI writes the thing and then you turn it in claiming it's yourself. I mean, it's like completely plagiarized. It's not just chunks.
But yeah, you can turn in something that you don't write under your name, and that's plagiarism.
I just completed this past summer a 2-year United States Army War College program, and every single submission I did. And it turns out they set the bar really low because somehow they declared me to be a distinguished graduate. I don't know what happened there. I promise I didn't pay anybody any money, nor would they take it. But one of the things that they do is every single submission that you make, and they're all typed. Every single submission has a sheet at the top of it where you have to put your name on it that says, I understand this code, the honor code. I understand this. This is all original work. I haven't blah, 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 blah. And for the military guys, you violate that thing. That is a potential career ender. That isn't just, hey, you get a black mark against your name. That kind of thing ends up stopping you moving forward as a military officer. Do you have disclaimers or some sort of thing that you have students sign before they submit something? Or is it simply, I put them on notice at the beginning of the semester and let's see what happens?
And it varies according to professor. I have an honor code, and the Baylor University has an honor code, and every student understands it, or every student has it explained to them. And I know some teachers have a statement that the student has to sign beforehand saying that this is original work on every piece. But I can't get past that little small voice that says if they're going to cheat, they're not going to take that seriously anyway.
Yeah. What do you do with the people that you've caught cheating?
Well, they get a 0 for the assignment. We talk through it, and usually, if they're cheating, their grades are in trouble in other ways too. But I give them a 0 for the assignment. They don't get a chance to make it up. Very often it sinks them for the course. And we have an honors council here that hears, appeals from students and things like that. If the student doesn't want to take the medicine, they can go to the honors council, and the honors council will weigh in and issue a judgment as well.
This is the prosecutor in me asking, but what's the number one excuse or justification given for someone who cheats? And I presume the cheating typically takes the form of plagiarism.
Yeah, it usually takes the form of cutting and pasting from other sources into your source. And usually the explanation is one of two things. Number one, I didn't realize it was not allowed. And number two,
because they're in third grade.
And listen to this. And number two, someone who was proofing it did it for me. I see a lot of friends and grandparents and stuff like that thrown under the bus because it must have been the person who proofed it for me who did it.
They proofed it and snuck in someone else's words into the paper, and then the person didn't review it before they submitted it. You know what? My guess is that happens all the time. This is crazy. One other thing about this Chat GPT, do you feel like we're going to get to a place with this technology, this AI stuff, where there isn't going to be the same need for students to be not critical thinkers, but I guess better writers, that maybe that's just not going to be part of the analysis anymore for learning?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. That's my greatest fear, that stuff like this will become so pervasive that we think, okay, well, I don't need to write because this is going to write it for me. And all I need to do is ask AI a question, and then it will do the work for me. And it drives me nuts.
Is there any answer to this other than at least what you've said here, which is I make folks handwrite out their essays? That's the only way I can think of. It's almost like an air gap between technology and the pen. You know what I mean? So you can't have the ability to cheat.
And you can always call them in for an oral exam. You can say, I want you to come in and talk to me about your paper, and I'm going to ask you some questions. That's one way to do it. And the other way that I'm really looking at trying to figure out ways to make their responses need to be personal enough so that they have to write from their own thoughts. What do you think of this? An AI isn't going to be able to tell me what you think of this, and an AI isn't going to be able to tell me what the class that they're in pertains to the paper they're writing. Use specific examples from the lecture in order to back up the points you're making about the book you're reviewing.
When you talk to the other colleagues that you have in the department, or maybe even broader than that at the university, do they express similar concerns, or do some of them are like, I don't care? I mean, whatever.
No, everybody cares. Everybody's worried. Everybody's nervous. We all talk to each other about how can we design questions that'll get past this. What are you going to do? You're going to have them write essays in class. You're going to go in that direction. Yeah, we're very collegial in this, and we all recognize it as a threat to what we do.
I have been an adjunct professor at the University of Denver College of Law for a little over 20 years now, and I did have one student cheat, and it was the old school way of gut instinct, right? So you get a sense of someone's level of mastery of the material and some of their intellect based on in-class engagement, right? Like you ask questions.
Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden I got this paper where I'm reading this and I'm like, damn, like this is really cohesive and it's cogent and it's persuasive and it doesn't sound anything like what I got out of this person in class. So I just did, and this is going back, I don't know, 18 years. I just cut out pieces of the paper and stuck them into Google. And then bam,
I've done that too.
It would just pop up with someone else's stuff. And pretty soon I find 5, 7, 10 different quotes that are really quotes that belong to someone else that weren't attributed as quotes. And this is where the frustrating part for me was, Professor, and maybe Baylor does it differently. So I failed this person. I tell him, hey, I think you did all this stuff. I think that these are all plagiarized. You didn't cite them, all this other stuff. First statement I get is, that's not true. That's my original work. Then I send them the things that I find. And then I hear, I didn't know I had to put quotes around them. I thought I had done that. I thought I had put quotes around them. I just must have miscited. So I end up saying, look, you fail. There's just no chance you cannot fail. And send it off to the the people that do the grades and such. And then, as you can imagine, a student in law school goes apoplectic. Getting an F, especially for something like cheating, is the kind of thing that could haunt you. And so, of course, they get their dad involved, who's some big time attorney somewhere. And pretty soon I'm getting emails saying things like, we should give them an alternative assignment and give them. I'm like, well, wait, the assignment isn't the problem. It's the complete lack of character is the problem. And there is no secondary assignment that's going to fix that, right? Like you can maybe get them to generate another paper, but this thing becomes a story. I've told this before. I got friends who are teachers. They tell me things like this all the time, that in the modern era, more and more of these schools, even especially at the high school level, are putting pressure on teachers to not fail kids for cheating, but to give them the old slap on the wrist and give them an alternative assignment. Do you sense that at all in academics, or at the level that you're at, which is a pretty high level? Is it, no, we subscribe to the same standards we did 20 years ago?
There's high standards, and the Honors Council backs the professors really, really well. And there's not this sense that, there's always extenuating circumstances, and there's always people who want to give second chances. And I'm not against second chances. It all depends on the student. But I feel pretty backed up. If somebody cheats and I bust them for it, I know somebody up the chain of command is going to have my back.
I love to hear that part of it. And the second chance thing, it's not that I'm opposed to second chances, but if someone comes in and they just fail the test because, you know what, they didn't study hard or they just completely missed a question. Okay, I get the second chance thing. But cheating, it is such an intentional, such deliberate conduct. I feel like, what am I going to give you a second chance to prove to me? That I won't cheat again after I got caught cheating? Like, I don't care anymore. Like, you've shown me who you are. Move on. Next assignment. Let's go. Good luck on the next one.
Yeah, cheating is a moral issue. And getting a question wrong on a test, you didn't know it, big deal. But cheating is something totally different. And I'm not sure students understand that very well.
I am thrilled to hear, by the way, that Baylor is still old school and that you're still figuring out a way to try to address all this stuff.
Absolutely.
I'd love to have you back on in the future so we can actually talk the history stuff that you know. This was much more of the procedural administrative side of what you do, but I'd love to get into the substance with you.
Yeah, let's get the fun stuff going.
Boom. Well, we'll have you back on very soon. Professor Smith, thanks. Get back to class, start catching those cheaters, and we'll talk with you soon.
You got it, George. Great to talk to you.
All right, sir. Thank you. Hey, that's Professor David A. Smith. He's a professor of history at Baylor University. Guy's got a PhD, so I think we're supposed to call him doctor or something like that. And I will next time, I promise. A lot of good texts here. They love hearing from the professor. Now, listen, before I cut away for a quick break, let me tell you about Gay Ribble at Empower Home Team, Keller Williams Realty. The reason that you need to know about Gay Ribble is because this market that we're in right now, and I've been saying this for months, is so dynamic, this real estate market, that you need someone that can do two big things. One, get you into the end zone on your goals. But two, take that stress away from you. There's so much stress associated with how much do I list my house for? How long do I leave it on the market? How do I sell it? How do I posture it so that it's more attractive to others? How do I get people to look at it? And then it's, I want to buy a house. How am I going to get into this house? Because as you know, even though interest rates have gone up a bunch, this market is still pretty hot. Prices are still really competitive and are continuing to inch up. If you want someone who's able to put you into that home after getting you out of your old one, or maybe you have to move, maybe you want to move, she can help you get there. It's Gay Ribble. I like Gay a lot as a person, not just as an expert in this area, but as a human being. She is a wonderful person. And so if you're thinking to yourself, I don't just want someone who's going to put the best bucks in my pocket and get me in the right house, but I want someone I can feel good about working with, that's Gay Ribble at Empower Home Team Keller Williams Realty. Give her a call at this specific number, and it's an easy one, 833, super easy, 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. She will talk you through not only the fact that she has 14,000 buyers in waiting to look at your home when it gets listed, but she'll talk you through the many programs that she and the team have to help put your mind at ease, like guaranteeing you to get out of your house at a certain price and a certain time. Nobody does that. They do it in writing. Check them out. Go visit her at gayhasthebuyers.com. That's gay, G-A-Y-E, hasthebuyers.com. When we come back, I'll be honest with you, I'm still fascinated by this topic. I want to talk a little bit more about cheating, and I want to get your stories, especially if you're a teacher out there. If you're a teacher, you might be in class right now. I want to hear about cheating. Cheating either that you did, and you can use an anonymous name. You could choose the name Billy Thorpe. It doesn't matter. It's been taken. Or tell us about cheating that took place in school and what happened as a result. I have my own horror stories when we come back. 303-696-1971. George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Bracco right back with you here on 710 KNUS. Sounds like a little bit of a Steven Tyler voice going on right there. Hey, my thanks to Professor David A. Smith from Baylor University. We had a conversation about this ChatGPT AI. I don't know if it's software. I don't even know what the heck you call it, but AI product where students are now able to generate university quality writing in a couple seconds without really doing much of anything. And it seems like it's super cool to think that AI could do that, but super scary, especially in the academic world, because of the potential for plagiarism, which is always out there. I told a little story about when I was earlier on in my adjunct professorial career at the University of Denver College of Law and caught a student cheating. And one, it was kind of exciting. I felt like a little bit like an investigator, you know, when you discover it, you're like, I got it. And you just keep digging and you find more and more and more and all that stuff. But I was disappointed in the approach at the time that the university took, which was to allow this student an opportunity to submit some sort of an alternative assignment, even if it was for an average grade or a less than an A grade. I don't care. It seems to me that there has to be a no tolerance policy for cheating. And in many ways, I feel the same way about theft. There are a lot of crimes out there that sound like they're more serious than theft. But at the misdemeanor level, like shoplifting, there are no other crimes that carry that kind of specific intent to them. Like you don't accidentally plagiarize someone. You don't accidentally cheat on a test, and you don't accidentally shoplift. These are all things that aren't done in the heat of the moment. There's no, emotional outburst that results in, I'm just going to grab these 3 Zagnut bars and leave. It doesn't work like that. So those are crimes. Those are acts that I feel like need to have zero tolerance. And cheating is the same way. So I talked to Billy up there. We've got some cheating stories. And I'd love to hear, by the way, your cheating stories as well, because these things are insightful about our fellow man. But I'm also interested to know, especially if you know of cheating that's taken place in the modern era here in school, what did the school do about it? So here's my story. I cannot dime out this teacher because they're a good friend and they're still teaching, and I don't want to put them in a weird way with their school. But this is a guy that teaches math. Wonderful guy, great math teacher. At one point wanted to be the guy that changed. He wanted to get a degree in statistics and go into actuarial stuff, which I didn't understand what that was. Ultimately, his goal was he wanted to be the score changer out at Fenway. That would have been his dream job. I don't know what it pays, if anything, but he would have been happy to live behind the scoreboard in Fenway. Anyway, he becomes this teacher, and he's at high school level. And as you can imagine, math is done in pencil for a whole bunch of reasons. And he gets all these tests in one day, and he sends them all back after he grades them. Very diligent teacher. And a student comes up, and she says to him, hey, Mr. So-and-so. She's like, I'm confused here. You marked this one as wrong and took some points off, but I actually think I got it right. And he's like, well, of course, let's take a look. And he looks at it, and sure enough, it says the right stuff that he had marked off on. And he thought, that is so weird because I'm not normally that guy. I don't normally make those kinds of mistakes. So he's like, I get it. He fixes the grade, hands it back. No big deal. Next test, same girl comes up. She's like, Mr. So-and-so, I'm starting to think you have it out for me. Laugh, laugh, giggle, giggle, because you did it again. You did it again, right? Look at this thing right here. And he looks at it and he's like, oh my goodness, what is wrong with me? I can't believe it. He goes, it's just so weird about this. She looks at him and he says, I made a copy of the test that I handed back with my marks and yours on it. And he pulls it out of the drawer. And apparently this female high school student goes ashen, like the blood leaves, I think, every part of her face. And she probably makes a little bit of pee-pee. If you can imagine that moment as a young prosecutor, when I heard the story initially, I lived for that moment. That's the moment that you want, that moment where, gotcha. And apparently she had nothing to say, broke down in tears. He said, I'm giving you an F. I'm failing you. I love that story. And then I hated the story because then he tells me that, true to form, the parents, the helicopter parents, come rallying to their daughter's cause. They show up. They're in the ear of the principal, who's in the ear of the department head. And pretty soon they call this guy in and they're like, hey, do they have to have an F? Answer, yes, they absolutely have to have an F. I caught them red-handed cheating now, and apparently twice. And the answer from the school is, hey, look, we're going to give her an opportunity to do a makeup test so she can demonstrate that she knew the material, and you're going to do that. And I thought, buddy, you just broke my heart because you make me weep for what is supposed to be administrative support for teachers, but also leadership at the academic level. I was horrified because do you know what that girl learned from that cheating episode? One, I got to be better at cheating. And two, mom and dad will come save the day for me, no matter what I do wrong. Now, I told that story to the kids, to the Brockler kids. And man, if any of them cheated, I think they know it would be a life-altering moment for everyone involved. But I sat down and I told them that story and they all laughed. And I said, listen, here's the bottom line. If you do something wrong, mom and dad will always love you. That never changes. That never, ever, never goes away. And you ought to count on that. But if you do something like cheat or you hurt some kid at school, that kind of thing, you should expect that you will be held accountable. And I don't talk about the school. I don't know what they're going to do. I know what I'm going to do. And they get it. And it's not to put fear in them. It's just so that they understand there are standards. But these stories about these teachers and the administrators at odds over what to do with cheaters, it hurts my stomach. And there may be people out there listening now who's had a kid that's been accused of this. I think this is one of the greatest weaknesses in education right now, K through 12. It's not even just the substantive stuff. It's the fact that parents rally to their child's cause no matter what is said, or no matter what negative happens to them. I promise you, if the school had ever called, if Belmar Elementary or Carmody Junior High or Bear Creek had ever called up my mom, called up Mrs. Brockler and said, we caught your son cheating, I would already begin to feel the life drain out of my body if I knew that phone call was coming, because there was never going to be a conversation that was, well, tell me what happened. And maybe he was really trying. There would never be that. Back in that day, when teachers said you did something, you were guilty unless you could prove yourself innocent. It has gone completely the different direction where I'm not surprised that kids are out there taking a shot at cheating because the ramifications for it are so de minimis. I want to make an example of a cheater. If I'm a teacher at the high school level and I catch a kid cheating, I want them to sit in the front of the class, not with a dunce cap on, but with a sandwich board that says, I cheated, I got an F. This is what happens when you cheat.
George, I have an experience of, one, being the cheater, two, having someone in class be the cheater and something bad that happened to him.
Oh, yeah, tell me.
And getting the phone call from the teacher saying, your kid's a cheater.
Oh, buddy, that is hard. That would make my stomach hurt. Oh, God.
Again, that call was difficult at first, but it ended up being really, really good. It was actually a really, really good thing. The cheating that I had a classmate do is on another level. It was actually at the university legendary for a number of years because of how boneheaded it was.
Wow.
This was a individual who was playing for one of the sports teams, not the sports team I was on, but he played in a different sports ball team. So he's on the other sports ball team, and we have to submit our end of semester term papers. So all the stuff that we've done, it's about a 30-year grade, and we all submit them. Well, come to find out that this other guy in the class starts getting investigated academically. They do an investigation. It lasts about 24 hours.
Wow.
And he is expelled from school.
Boom.
And
holy smokes.
The reason being is because his final term paper was 100% plagiarized.
Huh?
100%. And the reason the investigation was so quick and so certain, and the reason the professor was so certain, is because this guy just did a copy paste of everything, including
from someone else's paper.
Yes, from someone else that had done a paper years ago. I mean, this isn't someone at the school. This is something they found online, and they did a copy paste of everything, which included the dedication at the front of the writing to the person's wife and children.
Oh, no.
Given the fact that this player was neither married nor had children, the professor said it was one of the worst cases of cheating he's ever come across.
That's
because
natural selection.
It took him 2 paragraphs. He said, I'm 2 paragraphs in and no, this is BS.
That's just natural selection,
I know.
my friend.
It is.
This is a guy who needs to be weeded out of the herd.
Yes,
they would have left him by the rocks at birth if they'd have known.
They would have. Now, I, as a parent, got the phone call from a professor saying, your child has cheated. And it was difficult, but it was really, really good in the long run because, and the thing was, I had the teacher, and what it was is the person, the child, and I will not name them on the air, but the child had basically gone through and had taken paragraphs. It had an assignment, an English assignment, and had taken paragraphs and just cut and pasted different paragraphs from different people, and had added some fluff between the paragraphs in order to blend everything together so it looked like something they did. But again, the vast majority of it was cut and paste, and yes, it was cheating. So it absolutely was cheating. And what we did is we had a meeting with the teacher. We sat down, we explained it, and we said this and this and this, and we said it's not acceptable. And I asked the teacher, listen, can he rewrite? Okay, now I've given it up. Okay, so it's half the kids. So it's one of the boys. Can he rewrite the paper? But can the maximum grade on the paper be a C? That's the highest grade they can get, just so he can get the points, so that he doesn't necessarily tank the entire grade in the semester. But I will respect whatever you wanted. And the teacher looked at me and he said, thank you. And I went, what? Yeah. And he goes, thank you for not coming in here and argue that your child should get this score or anything else. He said, you've acknowledged that he's done it wrong. You brought him in. We've talked about what's wrong. And now he has a chance to do it right. But because we tanked it the first time because it was cheating, we're not going to give him the same opportunity the other students got to get 100%. That they're going to have to do the work, but realize that they can't get 100%. And he hated it. But it was one of the best things in the world. He still goes back and talks about that with me and said that was one of the best lessons he learned, because part of it is he didn't understand. He really honestly didn't understand that was per se cheating, because he thought he was, using what other people were saying, but he didn't understand the attribution. So it was the idea of, no, you've got to get an attribution. And it's much better if you say, John Smith, or like a professor from Baylor, David Smith says this, and then you react to it. And then David Smith continues this, and I agree or disagree. That's how you can build that, but you have to give attribution. You can't present these as if they are your original ideas. And he's like, I said, you also can't cut and paste 3 paragraphs and say, hey, I'm citing this. You can't do that. Like, you can't say, as David Smith says, and then run 4 paragraphs. You've got to be able to encapsulate it.
Although if you do that, that feels at least like you're saying, hey, this ain't my work. That one doesn't bother me nearly as much.
I appreciate it, but the 4 paragraphs is just way too much, because for me, you're filler. You're doing filler at that point. You're just trying to create. You're trying to create, space. You're trying to create, lines on the paper so you can get to the end of the 6-page or 12-page or 20-page, whatever you want.
And honestly, you really have to do that by manipulating margins and font size.
Yes,
you can't just.
That's where the real artistry is. You got to learn that. And so, but my son said he learned so much, and he was a much better student, and it allowed him to be a better student, and it gave him in many ways. He said it gave him more confidence, because rather than looking and saying, oh, what did somebody else say? He was allowed to take in what someone else said and then say, I agree or disagree with it. He felt it very empowering. And it was really difficult. He said that was the most difficult class he ever took. And he said it was really hard, but he goes back, even to this day, he goes back and finds that teacher and says, thank you. Thank you so much for that. So
it was
nice. It was a great lesson.
That's a great story. That may be the good side of how this thing works out. As you can imagine, before we cut away for a break and we're joined by our buddies at Alpine, I should tell you, the texters, Billy, they're just on a different level than we are. As we're discussing the cheating and the plagiarism, of course, now multiple texts that make reference to Joe Biden. As you can know, like, was it Joe Biden? Doesn't mean any of these cheaters won't go on to be president of the United States. And it's just so funny, but it makes me feel bad, because why didn't I think of that? You guys are just so funny. Listen, stick around. We're going to be joined by Alpine Planning when we come back, and then we'll continue the conversation. More stories about the cheating. Billy hasn't even finished his. I've got another one I want to talk about. It's George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brockman right back with you here at 710 KNUS. We are being joined by our good buddy from Alpine Planning, Amy Duncan. Happy Monday to you, Amy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brockler. Happy Monday back at you. My lips have thawed out. You know,
Oh, that's
it's a
nice.
nice warm day out.
Oh, my sweet goodness. Is it cold out there or what?
Yeah, right. My goodness. Well, we missed you. I'm
Yeah.
not sure where you were, but
Jordan.
great to hear your voice, sir.
I was in Amman, Jordan, doing some military business.
Good for you.
It was-
God bless America.
It was
man.
not
Thank
cold
you.
there. It was not cold.
I'm guessing it wasn't.
No,
Well, good.
no. What do you got
All
for
right.
us?
Well, we're gonna dive right in, sir, because we got a busy week on the docket. Right now, numbers are relatively flat. The Dow is off about 17. The S&P is down 15. NASDAQ is down about 85 points. But I think that will probably reverse later today. Last week, nice week on markets. And actually, we're on a little bit of a January winning streak
Right
here,
on.
George.
Boom.
Last week alone, the Dow was up 1.8%. S&P was up 2.5%, and the NASDAQ was up 4.3%. Earnings have been coming in good. Taking a look at the NASDAQ, right? Tesla, of course, had their worst year on record in 2022, but they're up 40% in January, which
Oh
is
my
just amazing.
gosh.
So
Should have bought.
what,
Darn it.
what are we watching this week? 100 of the S&P 500 companies report this week. You talk about an all-star lineup. Here we go. Caterpillar, ExxonMobil, GM, McDonald's, Pfizer, UPS, Apple, and Amazon are all going to
Big
report.
ones.
And then, of course, Wednesday's a big day. That's the Federal Reserve meeting. The
What
Fed,
do
of course,
you think's
raised
going to happen? What's your best guess?
another increase, but I think they're gonna be slimming the increase, if you will. So they raised rates 7 times in 2022, and again, the announcement is scheduled for Wednesday, the 31st. Key hopes are that inflation is peaking, and they'll be able to kind of hit the brakes instead of the accelerator.
You think 25 or 50?
I hate to just give a prediction to answer your question. I'm hoping for 25.
Me too.
I don't think 50 would be unrealistic. Again, though, if they do 50, I think that increases the chance that the brakes will be tapped as opposed to the accelerator staying on in February and March. So, and frankly, I don't think that the difference in 25 and 50 would be that big of a market mover. I think investors and, a lot of big corporations have already kind of priced this in, thinking that we might be close to them easing things off. There is actually quite a bit of disagreement between the Federal Reserves around the country. Of course, Powell gets all the spotlight, right, when he makes the announcement.
That's right.
But the reality is there are, I just opened my mouth and I don't know the true answer, but there's like 10 or 12. I got to get that figure. I'm almost embarrassed. I don't know.
No.
Federal Reserves around reserve banks around the country, and some of the leading figures have varying thoughts on this continued rate hike. So I'll wrap up, George, without getting too long-winded, and I will correct that statistic for you. I'm kind of embarrassed, but
not at all.
as always, if anyone has some concerns, wondering what they should do with their portfolio for 2023, then give us a call. We'll see if we can help.
Amy, can I convert you over to our topic of the day leading into this, only because you two were a product of public school? Remind us again, where'd you go to public school?
Well, I was not born and raised in Colorado, but I went my entire life, K through 12 public school in San Juan Unified School District, it was called, in Northern California.
When you were there, did you ever come across kids who were caught cheating on tests or quizzes or whatever? And what did the school do about it?
Yes, of course I did. And I think that the consequences for that kind of thing have never been strong enough, is my first instinct.
Amen.
Right? And, I'm a big fan of public schools, I'll be honest, although there are certainly way too many problems to even begin to talk about. But, the reality is the ratios have always been a challenge for teachers and students. You get a couple of, bad apples in a classroom and the teacher has to keep control. So and I think, I grew up in a different decade where, you weren't on technology. You didn't have phones and computers in the classroom.
Right.
Right. I mean, so I think the pencil and paper probably made cheating an entirely less
I
less
think that's
offensive
true
type
too.
thing. Now you can text your buddy the answer, and all of a sudden everyone's getting A's. So
My sons are telling me that guys are using, and not just men, I'm saying guys as in guys and gals, are using like Apple Watches. Like they've seen people cheating using Apple Watches. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, no longer is it the try to hide it in the palm of your hand and hope you wash it off before your parents see, right?
Right. That's right. Or the little 3x5 note card that is written in such small print that it seems to contain.
Yeah, what are the consequences you're hearing right now?
Well, I just told this story before about a buddy of mine who caught someone cheating in math and gave him an F, and the parents, of course, ran to the school and cried foul. And so the administration forced him to give her an opportunity to have a makeup grade. And I thought, to make up what, though? The problem is not her performance on the test. The problem is the character flaw. The problem is the cheating. You can't give, what do you give them another shot to prove they don't have to cheat? Like, who cares? You cheated. You get the 0. Move on.
Yep. I hear you.
Well, Amy Duncan, you are fantastic, and we're gonna have you back on. Don't worry about the statistics stuff. I can't remember either, but if you can memorize every single name of every Federal Reserve chairperson, that would be awesome. Alpine Planning Group is a comprehensive financial planning firm committed to improving your long-term financial success. Investing, it's a matter of trust. They're prepared to earn yours. Call them today, 303-843-0918. Thanks, Amy.
You bet. See you, George.
See ya.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Woodbury Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC and registered investment advisor. Alpine Planning Group and Woodbury Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated entities. 14 West Dry Creek Circle, Littleton, Colorado, 80120.
Now, listen, we're out of time. Listen, I'm prepared to talk about the Tyre Nichols case, and we've got some sound from it. We could do that, but I'm still fascinated by the cheating thing, and based at least on the text, some of you are as well. We'll come back and have that conversation, but I'd rather talk to you about it on the phone. 303-696-1971. Easy number for an easy show. George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Bracco right back with you here on the George Show, 710 KNUS, halfway through before we turn it over to Chuck Kirk at the 10 o'clock hour. Now, listen, I could continue to tell stories about the cheating that took place in school and sort of the response to it from teachers and others. Like Billy, I have my own story in which I myself, you can't really call it cheating. It's not really cheating, but it was definitely credibility impacting, honor kind of impacting moment. But I also want to talk about this Tyre Nichols case. It's the news of the day. It took place, of course, the release of the video after we went off the air on Thursday, and even after I think Caldera went off the air on Friday. So there wasn't a lot of time. I did make some comment about this on KDVR a couple times on Friday, but there's a lot to talk about and unpack with this. But Billy, I feel like I don't want to cheat you out of the ability to tell your cheating story. And of course, I have my own. It's not cheating, but it's like that.
First of all, again, we'll apologize to my mom as I'm telling the story. It's going to be not a huge disappointment, a tiny disappointment. Love you, Mom. As a child in elementary school and part of middle school, I was really, really, really bad at spelling. I flipped letters. I just was no good at all. Yet, despite my obvious frailties with spelling words correctly, the teachers insisted on having weekly vocabulary quizzes. Now, I knew the definitions of the words. I just couldn't spell the stupid words. And thus, my English score was suffering a little bit based on those damn vocabulary quizzes. So I developed a technique. My technique, and you talked about just earlier in the last hour, you talked about, the little small writing on the 3x5 card. No, sir. You can get caught with a 3x5 card. But what you have to have at every possible test is a pen to write with.
Yeah.
So I realized that the clear Bic pens will act like a magnifier. So if you write really tiny and I could write the vocabulary words on a piece of paper, I could then slide it inside of the Bic pen.
Genius.
And if you line it up perfectly, it then will magnify the word. So the handful of words I didn't know how to spell were in my pen every week. And suddenly my vocabulary score really improved. And it was fantastic. And again, I know that I was cheating. I know I wasn't spelling it properly.
Smart,
but again,
cheating.
Today we have spell check on every computer. And it's much more important I know what the words mean. Then I know how to spell them because the computer will fix it for me. So again, it's a complete rationalization. And I know that and I accept it, but that's my big cheating story. That's what I did. And I did it. I mean,
how old were you? 30 what?
I think that served me well from, I want to say third grade through at least sixth. I can remember doing it at least through sixth grade. So yeah, it was a number of years. It was a nice system.
One of the texters has texted in, Bill is a genius, GENIOUS.
Exactly. That's what I would do. I remember in fourth grade, it was funny because I brought home this thing that I wrote, and the teacher was saying, "Oh, you should go share this with your mother." And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." And I brought it home, and it must have been third grade. And the funny thing is it was this great thing about, mom helping me and telling me what to do and giving me advice, except instead of mother, MOTHER, for whatever reason, I put an extra U in there. So it was the mouther. So the idea that, so he said the idea that you're talking about your mom doing all those great things, but she is the mouther. Yeah, they're like, it's kind of, and so they thought the teacher thought that mom would get a huge kick out of it, and she did. She laughed and laughed and laughed, and ever since then, I did spell mother correctly, but it was that.
Oh my goodness,
I was awful. I couldn't spell for nothing. Yeah.
I love that story, by the way. That's genius. The Bic thing, where was that when I was in school? I wish I'd have thought of that. Mine was a little different, and it goes way back. We're going back 40 years, folks. I was in 7th or 8th grade. I can no longer remember which. And I'm going to go ahead and say the teacher's name. I don't know if she's still with us or not. If she is, she's probably not listening to the show, but it was Miss Everett at Carmody Junior High. And there was a thing that she had every student do, and that was when you read a book or a chapter or whatever, at the end of the week, you had to have mom or dad's signature on the form that said, I attest that my son or daughter read this chapter or this book. And it was just the kind of thing that you had to do, every Friday. Well, I'm 12 or 13 at the time. And of course I forget sometimes. And so many times I did have my dad sign it or my mom sign it, but you forget a couple times. And by the way, there was no mercy. It was like, hey, if you didn't get it turned in and it wasn't signed on Friday, then you don't get credit for it. And so one day I was like panicked, and we're standing outside of her language arts class. And I turned to my good buddy, who interestingly, is the same teacher who caught the math cheater. This is one of my best buddies. And I turned to him, and he was brilliant at forgery. Brilliant. I mean, this guy could have led a life of crime. He chose, of course, math. Nonetheless, I would take my little form to him, and I'd be like, dude, I totally forgot to get my dad to sign the thing. And he would sit down and carve out a brilliant signature that was definitely passable for my father's. And he did this maybe once or twice. Let's say twice. So one day we're in class on Friday, and the class always begins with like 10 minutes of reading time or whatever. And so I'm sitting there and I'm reading, and I get called up to the podium, and Miss Everett's there, and she's very, very proper lady, sits very straight. You know what I'm talking about? And hair is always just so. And she says to me, hey, I've got this letter for your parents, and I'd like you to take it to them, and I want you to have it signed and returned on Monday. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know what it's about. I don't hear the train coming down the tracks, you know? So I'm like, oh, well, what's it about? She's like, she takes the letter out of the envelope, and she has 2 copied pages of these things. She goes, I believe you have been forging your parents' signature on these readings. And instantly I'm dropping things out of my body into my pants. I mean, they're just, it's a free fall, right? Whatever I ate earlier that morning.
Technically though, it wasn't you.
Well, so here's the thing. Here's the best part of the story. We're not even there.
Yeah.
So she pulls out these 2 sheets, and she says, George, these 2 signatures were not signed by the same person. And I look at them, and I'm like, oh my God, she's pulled out 2 that my dad actually signed. Like they were 2 my dad actually signed.
Oh, that's great.
And I look up at her, and I'm trying to suppress a smile, and I go, no, my dad really signed those. And she looks at me and gets that look. She's like, no, he didn't. She said, those were not signed by the same person. And I say to her, Miss Everett, you're making a mistake. And she's like, no,
don't do this.
You made the mistake.
No
now
way.
you go sit. So I take this letter home. It's all I could do to keep from like just kind of giddy skipping home, because I'm like, this is ridiculous. I tell my friend, I'm like, dude, look at this. I got busted for the forgery thing. And he's like, oh my God, like, are you going to die? I'm like, look, take a look. And he looks at the signatures. He goes, I didn't sign those. I'm like, I know. My dad actually signed them. So I take them home. I show them to my mom. Now, of course, when I tell my mom, hey, Miss Everett thinks that I forged dad's signature, my mom's instantly going for the spatula, right? Like what she calls the cake turner, because someone's going to get a beating, and it's going to be me. And I go, wait, but look. And she looks at him, and she recognizes my dad's signatures too. And she's like,
oh, that's great.
Your dad signed both those. I know, Mom. I know. I'm a victim here.
I'm so victimized.
And so Mom waits for Dad to come home and says, are these your? He's like, yeah, I signed those. Yeah, George brought me the form. I signed them. And I just look at her with these eyes like, I don't know where this is coming from. I think she hates me.
That's so mean to me.
And so my mom, who is an incredible writer, she first off, she's like the chief investigator for the Office for Civil Rights out of HHS in Denver. She's also at the time in her first or second year of law school, in her 40s, right, with kids. And she cranks out a letter on the old typewriter, right? This is before cranks out a letter that it's on fire. I mean, there's like smoke coming off of it. And she is so, and again, mercifully, Mom passed away in 98, so she can't hear this story and think, what did you make me do? So she writes this letter. It's scathing. I mean, it is just like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. These were both, and they have no idea that Miss Everett caught me, but not the right way.
Not the right way.
She just failed. And so I'm like skipping to school, like do, 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 do. I mean, it's very much like Peter and the Wolf music in the background. And I go take it into Miss Everett. She's like, do you have the letter? And I'm like, I do. I'm like, there it is.
Yes, I
Both
do.
my parents signed it. And she's like, oh, great. So we have the little quiet time to do the reading at the beginning of class. I can't read anything. Instead, I'm just staring at her as she opens the envelope. She pulls out the letter and begins reading it. And the reaction on her face, I see the pupils dilate. I see the blood leave her face as she's just, I'm sure, horrified that this is actually what happened.
Oh, God.
And I can't take my eyes away. It's like watching somebody fall off a bridge or something.
In slow motion.
And then finally she puts the letter in the envelope and then turns to look at me. And I'm just like, I don't even know if I have a book on the desk, but I'm staring down like I'm looking at something. And it was one of the most wonderful moments. And yet I'm guilty. There's no doubt. It's like being accused of a crime that you committed a week before you were accused of doing. Like, I didn't steal that TV. I stole the other TV. It's very much like that.
I didn't murder that guy.
No. But it became legendary for 2 reasons. One, that it happened, and that out of all the forged signatures, she happened to find 2 needles in a haystack that were my dad's actual signatures. And then for my buddy, who became a legend, his forgeries were so good she believed they were the originals. And it just lived on through.
Best marketing ever.
Oh my gosh. The number of times he signed documents that the parents should have signed were just amazing. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I got to tell you that's funny you make that about the signatures, because again, I'm not always the best rule follower. And that's kind of one of the things that has gotten me in trouble. And so this is as a parent. My kids would bring home their work, and you had to sign off on the edge of the notebook or whatever it was at the end to say that you've seen it. Yeah, I signed them. It just wasn't my name. So I just had this theory that the teachers are just looking for a signature.
They don't care.
Signature is, they don't care.
They don't care.
No. So my kids had President Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, Bruce Wayne, Lex Luthor, Shrek. All those people signed my kids' papers. Yes. And I all the time. Batman. I mean, I had no shame. I just would sit here.
And nobody ever reached out to say, hey.
No. And
buddy,
this is through 3 different kids and several different teachers, multiple teachers.
It may
and
be
nobody said a thing.
It may be that a recent visitor to the Citadel Museum in Amman, Jordan, had the name Richard M. Nixon. That may have happened.
Yeah, so that's I did. I mean, whatever I could think of, I just signed that day, and it was never my name, and never had anybody question a thing at all. So,
again, I love the story. I hope teachers are out there listening. Here's a texter. My then 5th grade son wrote a paper on our sheepdog Rudy about how sweet and loving he was. He computer typed the paper using spell check, and at the end of the semester, we got all his papers back, and a great note was written on the top commenting on the choice of word used to describe how gentle he was. The word was genital.
Yes, that is fantastic.
And of course, spell check isn't going to catch that because genital was spelled
perfectly
correctly. And who doesn't love a genital dog?
I know. It's every time you meet them the first time.
Oh my gosh, they hop up on you and rub their gentleness all over you.
All over.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Deep Smith of the gentleness. Yes.
Yeah. Now listen, and of course, there's some other texts here. The life lessons about people not, learning that actions or that conduct have consequences. I agree with that. Had a text from a buddy of mine who's a teacher who says, look, I just build it into the syllabus. And if you cheat, you get the 0. I don't even meet with the parents. I just send them the syllabus. It's like, please see here with a little arrow. That's plenty good. Listen, I could continue the cheating stories all morning because they're real. I don't recall ever cheating on a quiz or a test. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. The forgery thing was different. And one other thing, my buddy, who will remain nameless, who had the gift with the pen, the gift with the forgery, who's now a high school math teacher who crushes the cheaters. He had that superpower. For me, the superpower, which is in the same zip code as that, was my voice. The voice that you hear right now, even though I'm still recovering from this, whatever this thing was, this Andromeda strain, I've had about this voice since I was 14 years old. Now, what that means is back in the day, when you're talking in the 80s, when kids were going to be excused from school, a parent would call in and leave a message on the voicemail and the attendance thing that says, hey, so that was me. So there would be, I'm going to make up someone who I'm using his actual name. Let's call him Roger Noonan. And Roger and me and some other guys would be wanting to cut class or something like that. Sometimes I wasn't even involved. Sometimes they'd be like, hey, I need you to excuse me from 5th period. And I would pick up the phone and call into the Bear Creek attendance line. And I would say, hello, this is Steve Noonan, whatever Roger's dad's name was. This is Steve Noonan. And I wanted to let you know that Roger's not going to make it back from lunch. He's got a dental appointment. Well, he could be back for 7th period. You've got to make it sound like he could be back for 7th. But honestly, if we don't get done with this thing until I'll probably just bring him home. If you have any questions, of course, give us a call. And I'd even leave his number, the house number. Nobody ever called. Nobody ever follows up on any of those things. That was so you have these 2 guys that are defeating the parental system here with the schools. And this is back way before there was any Chat GPT or Apple Watches or cell phones. This was just straight up old school mischief, by teenagers. It concerns me that I've shared all those stories with my kids because I don't see any of them that way. I don't look at any one of my kids and think, you could go down that same dark road that I did. They are all such good, sweet kids, which I presume is the overwhelming influence of their mother. But I have that in the background. And some of the other things, stories I can never tell you on the radio, by the way, because even though the statute has run, just it's so damning. I couldn't possibly tell you some of these stories. But I do think to myself, and I wonder, what there but for the grace of God, what happens if I had been caught, right? Like, what happens if I had been busted? Where would my life be now? And I'm talking about things like, hypothetically, trespassing the school at night. I don't know that happened. I'm saying that's a hypothetical that could be part of it. Had I ever been busted, like, where would I be today if I had been sucked somehow into the juvenile system? Or even if back in the 80s they would have done that. Maybe the cops just would have, taken me home or something and let my parents beat me to death. But it's just, man, I don't know how we got on this, but now I'm thinking about all these things where I could just do a podcast on crap I did in high school. I mean, that could be its own podcast, and Billy, you'd have to be a frequent guest on there. And we could bring in all sorts of people to tell about the horrific things they did. And now they're in positions of prominence and respect. Maybe that's a word out there. Maybe it's a word of wisdom on how to treat kids who get in trouble. Right now, honestly, way too many kids get sucked into the system for stuff that back in the day would be treated differently. But that's a different story. Listen, when we come back from this, I promise you, we've got some texts that are in here. When we come back, I'm going to start to get into this Tyre Nichols case. It is horrific on a lot of levels, but I got questions, and I hope you have some thoughts on this thing as well too. It's an unusual thing, and when I say unusual, for some out there, they're like, this is what's going on every single day in America. That's nonsense. I don't believe that, but I do believe there's something going on here, and the question is, what should we do about it? How do we address this? So you stick around, and we're going to talk about Tyre Nichols when we come back. It's George Brockler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Little Red Hot Chili Peppers right here on 710 KNUS. George Brockler on the George Show with you. You would have to have been a hostage somewhere or trapped in a dark, dark hole, maybe under something heavy, to have missed the coverage of the 5 Memphis police officers who beat to death Tyre Nichols earlier this month. Now, it was on January the 7th that they conducted a traffic stop, they say, for something that was reckless driving. And then by the end of the conflict there that took place, I don't know how else to describe it, contact seems too light. By the end of it, Tyre Nichols gets taken to the hospital, and he's in the hospital in critical condition for 3 days before he dies. Now, the efforts by the police department to get on top of this quickly are unprecedented, in my opinion. Not only did they fire all 5 of the officers, we'll talk more about them in a moment, but they quickly moved to release the body camera and other video footage that they had from that night to the public. Now, I have thoughts on that too, some concerns, some questions, but those videos were released on Friday after the show. And I have since gone and watched, there's 4 videos that I'm aware of that were released. There is one from an officer. He appears to be a white officer from the initial contact. We'll talk about that in a second. There are 2 from officers who were engaged with Tyre Nichols when they finally caught back up to him. And then there was one video that appeared to be from like a house or a pole camera. I presume it was like a house because it's actually being manipulated and maneuvered to catch from a distance the contact with the officers and Tyre Nichols. And I want to talk to you about those things. This is the kind of case that is very, very difficult to watch for anyone. It's also very difficult to watch if you're a person who is, like I am, very much a back the blue kind of person. I've spent my career really in law enforcement at the other end of the spectrum, and that is the courtroom spectrum, both as a deputy district attorney and ultimately as the elected district attorney. And I'm a big supporter of law enforcement. I don't think they get a fair shake much of the time, less so today than they did even 20 years ago. But I also recognize that there are officers out there who break the law and who offend. I think we counted up 34 or 35 law enforcement officers that we prosecuted while I was district attorney for various things. But this thing right here, the fact that it becomes national news is not a surprise. We'll talk about what the national response is, but it's not a surprise. But when it is, and you see these kinds of videos with the kind of sound there, and I'm interested to know if someone has a different take on this, but it's so damaging to the brand. And it's so damaging to the career field. And coming off of the heels of George Floyd just a couple years ago. And if you're here in Colorado, we're still dealing with the aftermath of Elijah McClain. Now, by the way, I think that case is going to turn out very, very differently than the George Floyd and the what I think is going to happen to these 5 officers who have since been charged with second-degree murder. I think the Elijah McClain case is a lot more convoluted and a lot more complicated. It's not to say that the contact that Aurora had with Elijah McClain on that street that one night years ago wasn't problematic or handled improperly. I'm not suggesting that. But to have laid upon them the cause of death really is very difficult when you look at the evidence as it existed at the time, the evidence even as it is now, the fact that the judge has made the decision to split up the trial of these 5 people, 3 officers and 2 paramedics, into 3 separate trials. It's going to be a difficult case. I think the DA at the time, a guy named Dave Young out of Aurora, made the decision early on that, hey, there just wasn't enough information to move forward. And that was true, given what the medical examiner had said, which is, I can't tell you why this kid died. I can't tell you. I don't know. That feels a lot like reasonable doubt. But then that was in an environment before we released the body camera video. Well, we are not there anymore. And especially since Senate Bill 217, which was our post-George Floyd, post-Elijah McClain bill that created personal liability for police officers and sheriff's deputies, and ultimately, although not originally, state troopers. It's different. We now have a law that says, hey, body cam has to be released except under these certain circumstances. And I want to tell you, from the role of a prosecutor, I'm conflicted here because I know that I have to try this case. If I think I have bad officers, and that's exactly what the Shelby County District Attorney thinks here. Got bad cops. I got 5 cops who participated in the knowing killing of another person. That's second-degree murder under Tennessee law. That carries a potential sentence of 15 to 60 years in prison. Well, these guys are all pretty young, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's the end of their lives, right? Like, you get 4 to 6 decades in prison, and you're in your 30s, you're not leaving prison. We're not paroling 90-year-olds, right? They leave feet first. So big-time sentences available in this case. But if you're a prosecutor and you determine early on, as this guy has done, I'm going to hold these dudes accountable. I should tell you, by the way, the Shelby County District Attorney is a district attorney who defeated the incumbent and ran on pretty much one of those woke lefty platform things. So that's not to say this isn't a righteous prosecution. It's to say that this person may be motivated at a different level to be quick on the trigger. I don't know. But they move quickly. But as the prosecutor, you know that you have to pick a fair jury. You also know that there are rules of professional conduct. You can also call them ethics rules that say that you cannot poison the well of potential future jurors by burning a guy down in the public eye before he has his day in trial. In fact, you're not even supposed to make what they call extrajudicial. That means outside the courtroom statements on a pending case because of the worry for that. Now, that applies to both sides, but it really applies more to prosecutors. And the U.S. Attorney's Office, by the way, sucks at this more than anybody else. After they go get a grand jury indictment, they will show up and they will do a huge press conference, and it will have all the drugs and the guns and they'll put all this stuff up before the public to take pictures of it. I don't think that's right. But then what they do is they give the case away through the back door, and then their mum's the word on what happened. DAs at the local level are different. DAs don't make the same kind of announcement at the front end of an indictment or an information, and they tend to hold close all the evidence that they have for good reason because they don't want to run afoul of the ethics rules, and they want to be able to pick a fair jury. So if you go back to the Aurora Theater case, you'll remember all that massive coverage that took place, none of it involved law enforcement. You did not see the DA, either my predecessor or me, giving press conferences or talking about this or releasing video. You did none of it. In fact, we vigorously resisted every effort to try to get the information. Well, here in this case with these 5 officers who are accused of killing Tyre Nichols, the chief of police made the decision to release the body cam pretty quickly. Now, I know the motivation there, and I appreciate it. And that is, one, we want transparency. Law enforcement has gotten punched and kicked and beaten and bruised, some of it for good reason, in the public lately. And if we're going to maintain the trust of the community that we serve, we have to be as transparent with them as possible. So we're going to provide all this information to the public so that they can evaluate it and they know what we're doing. In fact, it's, in my opinion, why the chief quickly fired all 5 of these officers, was to say we are taking action. Do you remember the officers were all part of an organization called Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods, which conveniently spells out Scorpion. Just as an aside, folks, law enforcement and government in general have a moronic commitment to trying to turn everything into a damn word. We even do it here in Colorado. We have a group called Raven, some of the best police officers in the region that you can find that do incredible work, but they're just determined to be part of an organization that has a name associated with it. So they can then have a logo and they can then have a challenge coin and it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And so here's this one called Scorpion. Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. And I imagine people hugged it out when they figured out that spelled out Scorpion, or used Scorpion to come up with those words. Nonetheless, that group, that special new anti-violence unit, that has been permanently disbanded as a result of this. Very quick action by law enforcement. But the concern you have if you're the district attorney is these guys are going to at some point then say, Judge, we cannot get a fair trial here. We can't get a fair trial because they put out in front of the public, without our ability to comment or explain or otherwise, these pretty damning videos. I'm not telling you there's a good explanation. I'm saying this is their argument. And the worry is going to be, by the time this thing goes to trial, and I presume it will go to trial, that every juror that could come out of Shelby County will know this case intimately. It's kind of like what happened with George Floyd. Everybody remembers Derek Chauvin kneeling on that man's neck. Everybody remembers that. That's a real problem, especially if you're trying to make sure that these guys get a fair trial. Now, if your goal is, hey, we saw they did it, we've already convicted them, let's just get them into court so we can run them through the system and have them sentenced, then you don't care. But if your thought is, and every prosecutor should have this thought, I want to hold this guy accountable, but it's got to be through due process. They're entitled to a fair trial with a jury that hasn't been exposed to the evidence. If that's true, then the release of these videos, you have to view as, damn, man, I get it. I get the whole police interaction with the community and I get all that stuff. But this is now going to make it harder to successfully prosecute these guys, to successfully and fairly prosecute these guys. Now, in the past, when we had things like this happen in Aurora, let's say, chief of police would call me up and say it was either going to be Dan or Nick Metz, and they would say, hey, I want to release this video because it shows what really happened. My cops didn't do anything wrong, blah, 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 blah. And I would say, pretty please, don't do it. And I would tell them exactly what I told you. They knew it was coming. Please don't make it harder on me. And understand that there's a rule out there that says that I'm on the hook for the release of information by every other law enforcement agency, even though I don't have the power to tell them not to do it. So I would beg Nick, or I'd beg Dan, please don't release this stuff. And if you remember when Dan Oates was in here in the studio, back when he first came on as the interim chief before he retired, he talked about how difficult it was and how pissed off he was that I had asked him to do that. And my predecessor did too, to not release information about the heroism that his officers engaged in during the Aurora Theater Massacre. But nonetheless, he relented to the advice. So did Nick. But in the interim, Nick would say, Chief Metz would say, hey, can we meet with at least the family and their attorneys and show them the video? And I thought about that long and hard. And I thought, we can't keep them from commenting on it in the public. We lose control of that piece of it. But yes, especially parents. If the parents, the spouses of the person who was beaten or shot, died, we ought to at least pay them that respect and go through and show them the process and all this other stuff. And that worked out. In fact, Omar Montgomery, who's the head of the NAACP for Aurora chapter, fantastic guy at leading that group, by the way, he would be part of those things too. And in almost every single one, at least the ones I can remember, we'd come out of that and there'd be questions. They'd all have questions. But at the end of the day, it would de-escalate the situation quite a bit. And even Omar would say, I think this sucks. I wish these guys hadn't done this or that, but I understand what happened. So here we are with all this video that's available for the Tyre Nichols case. And if you haven't seen it, just because it's part of the national conversation right now, and it could lead to some national legislation, which I think is well-intentioned, but it is wrong. And I'll tell you why as we get there. There's a video, and there's 4 of them that are available that I've seen. And I described them to you. Now, the first part of this is they contact Tyre Nichols in their car, they being this Scorpion unit. And they're all decked out in their tactical gear. It's all black and, all this other stuff. They look like door kickers. And there's an attempt to get this guy. He gets pulled over. He's talking to them, and they go kinetic right away. They go hands-on with him, trying to pull him out of the car right away and get him on the ground, and they're screaming at him. I mean, it's pandemonium. Guy's able to get up and run away. Well, one of the officers who we have body cam for discharges his taser. Taser usually has 2 prongs with long cables that attach to a battery that will shoot a whole bunch of voltage through your body, causing you to convulse, drop to the ground, and never want it to happen ever again. And so he discharges his taser. He swears in the video that one of the prongs hits this guy. One prong is as good as 0 prongs because you need to have the current connected between the 2. That's how you get the little zzz. That's how you get that. And so he discharges it. And what's important about the video is not that this guy gets away, although it's amazing he gets away from 3 cops. I don't know how he does it. But you can get a sense of what him running away does to these officers and what's on their mind and what they're talking about with each other. This is a clip from a portion of that video. If you watch it, it's during the time that this guy's out of breath. These dudes must be in the worst shape of any officers ever because they're all breathing like they've been working in a mine shaft filled with smoke for 8 hours. And this guy's wrapping up his little deployed taser cords around his thing. And one of the things he's heard saying on his video as they're describing the fact that other officers think they have located Tyre Nichols in another part of the neighborhood, this is what this officer says.
I hope they stomp his ass. I hope they stomp his ass. Smith is calling for other cars because him and Martin are chasing him.
Him and Martin are chasing him, and I hope they stomp his ass. That is not good evidence, folks. Now, this is not a guy who participated in the actual death of what led to the death of this guy. Now, I've even had some texters text in and say, why wasn't this guy charged with second-degree murder? Because he didn't engage in that behavior. You may question whether or not discharging the taser was appropriate at the time. Given what I saw and what I heard, it was. This dude's trying to run away from the cops. They're trying to subdue him. This didn't seem out of the ordinary to me, but that's just based on the information I have. But this guy's state of mind and how he's describing things to others that are, and nobody objects. Nobody says, hey, man, we shouldn't stomp his ass. It's all part of this adrenaline-driven thing that these officers are going through. Now, I got more clips to play here about what took place, but I want to tell you of these, one of the great weaknesses, I think, in this unit and what took place that night is these are 5 officers who have, in my opinion, negligible experience. Negligible. Like less than 5 years of experience, and they are cut loose to be part of this high-impact superkinetic unit where they're using all their special gear and their special tactics and just they are missing someone with some experience there. What they're missing is like a sergeant or a lieutenant who and a lieutenant wouldn't normally ride with them, but rides with them and has immediate oversight over the decisions that they're making. And I'm talking about someone who's got 10 plus years of experience on the street. That's not what they had here. They had 5 officers, many of whom had been part of a class of like 2018 of police officers. That's only 4 or 5 years. That's not enough experience. They needed some veteran out there to be giving them better guidance and better commands, but they didn't. Now, we're going to talk about some more of the dynamics of this, including who these officers are, but we're going to get through some of this other video here. And the ultimate question for you is, and by the way, everybody on the planet has responded to this thing. I mean, our own governor weighed in with a proclamation about this, and I wonder why. And it's not because this wasn't tragic. It's not because it wasn't a crime, but is this the kind of thing that requires a governor of a state that is nowhere near Tennessee to chime in with some kind of proclamation? He's not alone. It feels incredibly political to me. It feels incredibly like I'm going to run for president someday. I better come out on this national case. We'll talk more about that too. Look, stick around. We'll get to all this stuff, including if you've got thoughts on this and what took place. I've got a bunch of texters, folks, who don't all agree with my description here. You can join them, but you can do it on the phone at 303-696-1971. Before we cut away, though, everybody out there is talking about regenerative medicine. That's real. I've heard that. Listen, I want to continue to be in my 30s, but it turns out the calendar says I'm a little bit older than that. And so I do some online research on things. And there's a way for you to get real, lasting relief without drugs or surgery. Now, it's not the first group that I've heard do this. I've heard other people talk about this procedure. But when you think about using your own genes, when you think about all the different innovative therapies that are out there, you got to start thinking about QC Kinetics. They are the nation's leader in a treatment that uses highly concentrated healing agents that they get from you, from your own body. So you don't have to worry about the rejection piece, to restore and repair damaged joint tissue. And that's becoming an increasing issue as we get up there in age. I can't tell you how many. My dad's had both knees replaced, the whole thing. If you're interested in that kind of pain relief without having to have the massive surgeries and the recovery time and the slings and the rehab and all this other stuff, QC Kinetics is the place to go. Now, I'm going to hook up with these folks here, I think, tomorrow to learn even more about the fascinating process that they go through, but also whether or not it could be used for me. Now, there's an easy way to get a hold of them, and that's to just pick up the phone. Free consultation, costs you nothing. All you get to be is smarter. 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986. And these QC Kinetics professionals, man, they got it going on. They'll answer all your questions, no high pressure stuff. If it's a good match for you, and it sounds like it could be, you hook up with these folks, you're going to thank me. These are the kinds of people that make the quality of life that you're going through right now better. And they're doing it not through the old scalpel, knife, and stabby way. They're doing it through the innovative way that uses your own cells to benefit you. Give them a call, 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. When we come back, more of you, me, Tyre Nichols, and the officers that were involved. It's George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today. Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brockler right back with you here at 710 KNUS, number 303-696-1971, talking about Tyre Nichols and what took place. Some texters asking questions. Someone saying it always starts with resisting arrest. I do think resisting arrest leads to an escalation of force. But there are a lot of folks that resist that don't get the kind of beating that this guy got. Another question, what drives someone who's supposed to be a good person, a cop, to do something that's evil? I can understand maybe one overreaction as you're trying to restrain someone, but continuing also with 5-on-1, very wrong. And also, how does it take 5 guys to restrain this guy? Now, something that I don't have the clip for, but it's in there, is at the end of this, when Tyre is slumped against the car and he's sliding down, a couple things I noticed, and I didn't get the sound clips for this, in part because the amount of profanity these cops use as just part of their normal lexicon is ridiculous. It would have just been Billy beeping through the entire thing. But these officers are saying he's got to be on something. Dude's got to be on something. He's so strong, got to be on something. Other guys that are there at the scene, and again, I don't see this in the video, but I am not breaking it down frame by frame, so it could be real. But a lot of the officers, two of them were saying, he went for my gun. He had his hand on, one cop says he had his hand on my gun. That's a big deal. When someone tries to disarm a police officer in the performance of their duties, that gives you a lot of license to do everything possible to stop that person because they pose a real imminent threat to your life and the lives of others. So that's different. And he says, hey, guy had his hand on my gun, tried to take my gun. I haven't seen that in the video, but maybe there's a still out there of it. But the other thing I noticed was at one point when Tyre Nichols is, and I don't know that these cops know that he's mortally wounded. I don't know that they know he's dying. But he's laying on the ground. He's writhing in pain. And one cop leans over him. He goes, there's nowhere to go, man. You got nowhere to go. Where are you going? You got nowhere. And I'm like, why are you talking to him at all? Like, what's the point? It felt almost taunting. The other thing I noticed about the video is there's no doubt that this guy did not want to be in custody. No doubt in my mind. Both times. First time, he runs away from the cops. Second time, he's trying to run away from the cops. And he keeps trying to, like, get away, and then he de-escalates and says, okay. But one of the more traumatic things to hear on this, especially if you're a parent, is the engagement when they catch him the second time. And there's already 3 cops on him. I think there's 3 on them. And a fourth one shows up. And the beating is real, man. They are trying to get his arm. And you hear them repeatedly saying, give us your hands. Give us your hands. So he must be resisting. But whatever they're doing to him causes this 29-year-old man to say this.
Get sprayed again. Hey, Mike. Hey, bro. Watch out. Mom! Hey. Give your hands. Give me.
Buddy, that's battlefield stuff, man. The only time you hear adult men yell out for their mom is when they think they're dying or they're in trouble. That just doesn't happen. I don't scream out from, short of a nightmare, I imagine, but I don't remember that. I would never scream out for my mom. But, I heard that thing right there, and I flash back to that scene in Saving Private Ryan where Giovanni Ribisi, who is the unit medic, has been hit. He's been shot, remember, and he's bleeding out. And they're asking him, what do we do? What do we do to help you? And basically, there's nothing they can do to help him except to continue to use their little morphine stabbers to take the pain away. And he's like, mom. I mean, it's the same thing. It's so traumatic to hear a guy cry out like that, but it's not the only time that it happened.
Hey, everybody, Mike. Watch out. Mom!
Man, that's a tough one. I can't imagine what it was like for Tyre Nichols' mother to sit through that and watch that. And again, none of that is to say that these officers don't have some explanation that they want to give for this, but watching that video, and there's more. There's more to play, and we'll do that when we come back in the 9 o'clock hour. Tyre's mom, according to Billy, says she can't watch it and won't. I get that, man. I can't imagine having the last memories of your kid's life be him going through that kind of an ordeal. But we'll talk about it more. Lots of texts. Follow up with the phone call, 303-696-1971. Where do we go from here? What did you see? What did you hear? Is this as big a deal as it's being made out to be? Is it not being treated the way it should be? give us a call and let us know at 303-696-1971. It's George Brockler on The George Show. We'll be back, 710 KNUS. Final hour of the show on this Monday, 30 January. George Brockler with The George Show here. Our number 303-696-1971. Text coming in. We have been talking about the Tyre Nichols death at the hands of 5 police officers in Memphis. It has been everywhere for a little bit, but since the video was released on Friday, a great deal of conversation about things that are going on. Of course, this event is going to be politicized. And we'll talk about that, what that looks like. But I wanted to finish with the discussion of a couple things. One, I played the audio, and I'll play it again here, of that I found to be particularly disturbing, was during the altercation. And there's 4 videos out there. You can go find them online. I did. This is the altercation, not the first one, where he's pulled over and he's managed to get out of the car and get away from the cops and run away. Even that's inexplicable how they let him get away. But they reacquire him, apprehend him, and then the beat is on, right, as they're trying to get him handcuffed, and they continue to scream at him, show us your hands, show us your hands, show us your hands. And you can hear him call for his mom. More on that in just a minute, though, but take a listen.
Hey! Watch out! Mom!
Now, for me, the 29-year-old guy that screams out for his mom was a sign of some incredible desperation and fear. And I had referenced this Saving Private Ryan scene with Giovanni Ribisi. You'll remember that one. Billy and I were talking about it off air. But a couple of texters here have sort of changed the context in which that happened. There are some folks that have said that they heard stories that this was about 80 feet from his mom's house, that it was in the neighborhood where his mom lives, and that he could very well, maybe likely was, screaming out for his mom. Now, it's still calling for help, but it's different if he believes his mom can hear him and that he's trying to summons her to this area. That does make it slightly different for me. And then someone texted, is that the only cut you have? No, if you listen to the last hour, you know that I've played 3 cuts so far, and I've got another one coming. But thank you, texter, for only listening to the first few seconds of the show. Here's one. My parents lived in this neighborhood about 2 blocks from where it happened. I believe his mother's house was close by. This is not inner city, but outskirts of Memphis. We had to move my mom out here after my dad passed because neighborhood was getting so bad. She still has friends there. Well, that's something too, to give a complexion for the neighborhood, because I'll tell you, it impacts honestly how officers approach any situation. You're going to Cherry Hills or Castle Pines, you have a different kind of spidey sense than if you're rolling up on a neighborhood where you've been out there a whole bunch of times for a lot of violent crime and other stuff. You just have a different approach to it. I imagine that that's true too. Now, there's a couple parts of this video that are inexplicable to me. There's one, it's a far off video, almost like from a neighbor's house or something. Maybe it was on a pole, but it's adjustable because you see them adjusted. But there is a scene there where one of the officers comes running in and appears to kick this guy. Big old kickball kick like you would do on the playground. Inexplicable. I can't imagine a situation in which there are 4 cops on a guy and another one shows up and kicks him, what that's supposed to accomplish other than an act of revenge. And certainly not, you're not able to subdue someone simply by deciding you want to give them a kick when there's 4 on them. The other part I don't get is 4 guys, 1 on each arm, 1 on each leg. How difficult is it to subdue someone? Now, we don't know yet what his toxicology is going to show. I haven't heard. Maybe you've already heard some. I haven't. That could give us some indication. But one of the other scenes that takes place in these videos, and if you listen, I think you can actually hear this happen. One of the officers, he steps back. He's behind one of the cars while they're struggling with this guy. And the guy's working him. 4 guys are yelling, show us your hands, or give us your hands, give us your hands. And this guy kind of loses his patience, and he pulls out a collapsible baton, and he comes around the corner and he swings at this guy twice and hits him twice. I don't know if it's in the head. I don't know if it's in the body, but if you listen to this clip as this guy starts yelling like he's had enough, you can hear kind of the thump twice on this.
Give me your hand! Give me your hand!
You hear that?
Are you okay? Well, it's a
There are 2 subtle little thuds in there, and this guy's screaming, give us your hands, give us your hands, as he's hitting him with this collapsible baton. It's in the context in which it happens, it's really very difficult to understand. It is, it's horrific judgment. Now, again, there are officers after the fact that say, hey, he was going for our gun. He was trying to disarm us. If that's true, that changes a little bit of the complexion. Doesn't warrant that full on, let's beat him down and in essence beat him to death. It doesn't warrant that, but it does warrant the use of considerable force to try to keep this guy from taking a firearm. That is a big, big deal. That's a life or death deal. And that's how they can treat it. But I didn't see that in the video. I didn't see that in any of the videos. You'll remember some guys they're using pepper spray, and then the dude starts screaming. Here's what happens. There is when you use OC spray or whatever this pepper spray is that they've deployed here, there's a stream, but it's not so targeted that it can't have a residual effect on those around this person. So you see some of the cops reacting to the fact that they're getting some blowback from the OC spray on them as well, and it's getting in their eyes. There's also a propellant that comes out of it. It's not just straight OC. There's a propellant that shoots it out of the little canister. Well, that propellant, if you squirt it too close to a person's face, that propellant can actually overwhelm the OC spray, and it doesn't have the same impact as if you stood back 3 or 4 feet. So you see these guys using the OC spray on this guy repeatedly. And then the hands are on him, and the beating part is just tough. And at one point after that, when you hear Tyre trying to make words, I can't tell if he's having trouble formulating words because of a head injury or injury to his mouth, but he is not the same guy. He is not sounding like the same guy. There's some texters in here that said, yes, heard the report. It was a pole cam. Okay, thank you. It all starts with resisting. There's a lot of cuts on that. Yeah, it all starts with resisting. I get it. But that's not the Katie bar the door for the cops to exercise anything that they want to do. I get it. He's resisting being detained. The real question here is if there's no reckless driving, if they can't prove up why they contacted him, even that resisting becomes a question mark. George, of course, the 5 officers were way out of line. However, I feel like police departments are underfunded, underappreciated, and overworked. They're fed up and stressed with picking up and arresting the same people over and over again. Too many of the best cops are retiring or choosing to leave the profession because too many people no longer have respect for authority. The reason the suspect got away and they had to keep chasing him is the cops can no longer use certain holds that they were taught in training. I'm not justifying their behavior. It's heartbreaking and absolutely disgusting and horrible. I agree. But is that what's going on here, folks? Do you see this as a natural outgrowth of the post-George Floyd era, where we have demoralized police, we've caused veteran police officers to retire, and other maybe good street cops who would be good street cops to just simply not apply for the profession? Is this part of this? Is this the result of George Floyd? It's not to take any responsibility away from the officers, but is this situation and the response to it the product of George Floyd? Is that what happened? Here's another texter. What injuries were the cause of death? I think they said it was blunt force trauma or something, but I can't remember. I didn't go back and look at what was released on that. I can't listen to this. It's too painful to hear that young man's last words. It's ridiculous because this crap just keeps escalating. Cops, black or white, at the end of the day are still cops. What's worse? People keep voting for politicians who are soft on crime. So this stuff will not stop until everything is changed, top to bottom. Is this a soft on crime thing? Did this happen because we're soft on crime? 303-696-1971. Why did this happen? And what's the fix? I heard Jim Jordan say there's no amount of training that can fix these 5 guys. I agree. This doesn't feel like a training issue. It feels like a supervision issue. Feels like, and that in that way, it could be a resource issue. Also, why didn't Memphis burn to the ground? Why didn't Memphis see what Minneapolis saw? Why didn't Memphis become Minneapolis Part 2, or Seattle for that matter? Is it because they released the body cam quickly? I can't imagine that's it. I mean, I think that is definitely helpful on the transparency side. I cannot imagine that. Is it because mom came forward and asked for peace? I think there's some value to that. I do. I think there's some value to the fact that mom came forward and said that. But don't you think in the back of your mind, don't you have that sneaking suspicion, and maybe you've even said it out loud, that it's because all 5 of these officers were black? Isn't that it? Picture the same Scorpion unit with the same stupid Scorpion name, but they're all 5 white guys. And these 5 white guys put a beating on this African-American man, this 29-year-old man, 80 feet from his mom's house, apparently. Do you think that we would be exactly where we're at today? Wouldn't this be viewed so differently? I mean, look, even Al Sharpton is coming out apparently to give which is a joke, but given the eulogy for this young man. But can you imagine what would have happened if these were 5 white officers instead of 5 black officers? Is it even wrong to have the conversation? Because in my mind, if it's 5 white cops, Memphis right now is on fire. I don't know. And then, of course, there are the typical cries that take place. Here's one. Memphis didn't burn because they did not include the white cop. Yep, that's part of it. Hi, George. Saw the comments on the internet that rumors are that Tyre was sleeping with one of the cops' wives. Now, listen, I know that there's a conspiracy theory out there for every single thing. I'd love to know if that's true. If that's true, this then probably moves from second-degree murder to first-degree murder if that cop is involved in this. Seems like the way the cop pulled him out of the car and the ensuing beating that it could be personal. I don't know. I hate to jump to conclusions like that. And the internet is so full of rumors, guys. I don't know. You know, there's rumors out there that the election was stolen. No, I'm kidding. Also, have they come up with any footage showing the supposed erratic driving? I don't think they have. Billy's been on this thing too. He hasn't seen anything. Apparently, the police department's struggling to try to figure out why they pulled him over because they don't see it. That information should be forthcoming too. But here's what's happened. Now politicians have rushed forward on this. And as awful as this is, and as viral as the video has gone, does that make it the kind of national issue that cries out for the governor of the state of Colorado to issue some kind of a press release on this? After the body cam, not after it happened, after the body cam. And sure enough, our own Governor Polis did it. He issued a press release that says violence has no place in our country, state, and communities as we heal together during this difficult time. Are we all heal? I mean, are we all hurt together? I think this is traumatic and awful, and these cops ought to be held accountable. But is this a wound to you? Is this a wound to Colorado that this thing took place? No parent should have to experience what the Nichols family is going through. Agreed. I appreciate the swift action by Tennessee law enforcement. Who cares? Who cares what you appreciate? Why are you chiming in on what is largely a local crime? Now, keep in mind, the feds are going to take a look at this too. And if there's any chance at all for Merrick Garland to rip this away under some sort of violation of civil rights, they're going to do it. But this is a local crime. Local cops killed a man, and it was not for race. It was not for race. Why is this a national issue? The George Floyd thing, I get it, man. That's because of the video, because it went viral. It was white on black. I understand. But is this the kind of thing now where everything like this that happens anywhere in the country, we can now expect Governor Polis to jump out and decry it from Colorado? I mean, I don't remember other governors coming forward after STEM and saying our hearts go out to the families from STEM. Why does this keep happening in Colorado? Something needs to be done in Colorado. Our attitude would be, we don't care about your opinion. Shut up. But here, we've got a governor that wants to run for president who's going to find every opportunity to politicize, and that's what he's done here, is to politicize this horrific event. Americans need to be able to trust those who have chosen to protect them and serve their communities. That's all true. And then he goes into a description of what we did here to break law enforcement by passing that SB 217. There's, and again, adopting a ridiculous line we've heard from the Attorney General too. There's more work to do. There's always more work to do to continue building this trust. I'm proud of the community-driven, bipartisan initiatives being pursued here. Well, one thing he ought to be saying is, federal government, do not tell us how to run our police departments. Because as much as I was opposed to certain portions of SB 217, what I do appreciate is at least it came from the state of Colorado. Now, I don't want the state of Colorado to tell Montrose Sheriff's Office or Delta Police Department, if they have one, how to run them. So I don't want the state of Colorado. I don't want the Boulder-Denver corridor telling them what standards their law enforcement should have. But I am much more open-minded to the state doing it than having the feds do it. And this is where we are. We now have cries from those on the left and even some on the right, some Republicans, that there must be action taken by Congress to address police officers. Why? What business is it of Congress about local law enforcement? This doesn't feel like this has anything to do with what was intended when we created Congress, that they were going to step in and pass some laws that govern how local law enforcement does its business on local crime. I don't think so. But that's what's coming. Even Tim Scott, and I like Tim Scott quite a bit. I think that guy could be president of the United States. Tim Scott came out last year, you'll remember, and with Cory Booker, who is the wildly liberal Democrat senator from New Jersey, who used to be a mayor of one of the cities out there. They had some quote unquote bipartisan legislation to try to tackle some of this stuff. It couldn't pass. And even today, the real risk will be, what will Republicans in the House of Representatives do with this? Because, of course, they're very pro-law enforcement, and they should also be very pro-states' rights on this and keep the federal government from dictating how local law enforcement should do its business. But this is what's coming for us. This will be the new wedge issue that the Dems use. And given where we're at in true blue Colorado right here, expect that to be an issue we hear more of here. We hear more of too. I just don't know if they can sustain it through all of 2024. This is a text. If the guys were white guys, Graceland would have been a pile of ashes. Yep, it would have. They'd have burned the thing to the ground. Someone else referencing Ashley Babbitt. And I said, well, what's the connection there? And it's like, it begins with the resisting. I don't see Ashley Babbitt as anything close to Tyre Nichols. Tyre Nichols wasn't trying to break into the Capitol while a mob was behind her chanting things about trying to get the Congress people. So I don't see that. I don't see that being the case at all. What I do think is that we're at a place right now where this issue, this horrific, horrible issue, which should be a story that gets covered, and it's got national eyes on it, but in no way should this result in calls from any elected representative in the state of Colorado for greater local or national change. Let's deal with what we have here in the state of Colorado and not simply react to what takes place in other jurisdictions. We are not Tennessee. We are not Minneapolis. And while you think about out there, especially if you're on the left under the Gold Dome, while you think about the other laws that you can pass that will further demoralize law enforcement, further tell them we don't trust them here in the state of Colorado for the actions of a handful. Think about what's next, right? Like, we're in an environment where crime is surging, and contrary to the governor's words, we're not in the middle of the pack on really anything. We are huge, right? Like, we are at the top in a whole bunch of crime categories. What are we, top 3 or 4 in increased homicide rate? Number 1 in America on car theft? Is that what's leading to this? When we get less officers with less resources and less support, do they end up becoming, as a function of that, more aggressive? They have less supervision out on the street, less sergeants. And they end up making these kinds of decisions, these adrenaline-driven decisions. I don't know. It doesn't get them off the hook for sure, but it does make me wonder, what's the fix for this? Or is there one? Or is this just an anomaly? Is this just a one-off with these 5 guys? 303-696-1971. We're going to cut away for a break here, but not before I tell you about a superstar in the law. And that's a guy named Dan Kaplis. Dan Kaplis and Barbara Waheed are in Dan's law firm, crushing it on behalf of victims. Now, Dan, of course, the son of a retired Chicago police officer who walked a beat, I think, forever. He's got a great deal of respect for law enforcement. He's also been a guy who's been out there willing, when necessary, to hold law enforcement accountable for the mistakes that they make. That's true too. And that's the kind of person that you want on your side, the person that does the right thing for the right reason. The only person that Kaplis will be beholden to is his client. And when I say that, I mean, the big insurance companies show up, they try to blow him down. That's not going to happen. They try to show up and intimidate he and Bobber. That isn't going to happen. I've seen it too often. And I don't want to make it seem silly, like they're laughing in the face of adversity, but these guys are unflappable. In fact, they're driven by the idea that the more the insurance company wants to push back and bully and intimidate, the more there's some reason that they want to do it. And they're going to find that reason. They're going to find that pressure point, and they're going to push on it until the person that harmed you is made to try to help make you whole. Even if you can't get back to 100% of a pain-free life, these folks will get you as much justice as you can possibly get out of our system. And they've proven it time and again, whether it's the 5 consecutive multi-million-dollar outcomes, the biggest verdict against a trucking company in the history of the state. Don't waste any more time here. If you or someone you love's been hurt by someone else, I don't care if it's government, private sector, whatever, pick up the phone and call 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. Or you can go to dancaplisslaw.com. That's Dan Caplis, C-A-P-L-I-S, law.com. When we come back, you, me, the text, the calls, George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Bracco right back with you here at 710 KNUS. Listen, some texters coming in. This is, again, an interesting one. The heat coming down on the Biden camp for his handling of classified documents, and what do you know? We get a cop beat down. Wow, how convenient. And I texted back, what does that mean? I mean, do you think this was invented? Like this was something that was done by someone to distract from Biden? Or is it that the coverage is intentionally focused on this so that it will distract from Biden? I don't feel that at all, man. I don't see that. I think it's convenient. I think it helps. That's for sure. But I don't think that that was the only story being talked about at the time. This is just one that is unique because we have so many different angles of the camera on it, and it looks so overwhelmingly negative. Here's another one. It all starts with resisting. Yeah, it starts with resisting. I don't understand why you keep saying that. So what? It starts with resisting. Then what? Once you start resisting, how about this? How about the idea that are we rapidly growing into a period of time, much like the don't pursue policies that some of these other jurisdictions like Denver, like you get in a high-speed chase with Denver, because of the risk to other people, they'll just let you go. They don't even care. They'll let you go. Now, Douglas County doesn't have that policy. They will pursue you until you're done, and that's either captured or done. Weld County's the same way. Are we rapidly approaching a period of time where when someone resists arrest, depending upon the crime for which they were being contacted, we just let them go? If they want to run away, we just let them go. We'll catch up to him some other time. We had his car, for God's sake. We just let him go. I mean, does it matter that they're trying to contact him for reckless driving? Maybe we feel differently. If someone's trying to resist and get away and we think they're good for sexual assault on a child or murder, we say, absolutely not. You do everything you can to keep that dude in custody. But if it's someone that's pulled over for a traffic violation and they try to run away, do we just shrug it off and go, well, not worth the risk. Just don't pursue. 303-696-1971. Nick, you're on 710. What do you think?
I just want to make a couple of general comments about being a policeman, not only in this country, but in the rest of the world. It's one of those occupations where there's no room for error. You could have 99 cops that are honest and do everything by the book, and that one cop does something bad for whatever reason, and all of a sudden it taints the other 99. Police are always under the microscope, and especially in our society today. And I would love to see, but it's not going to happen. One of my major peeves is that we haven't had any real leaders in this country for a long, long time. I would love to see the president, which will not happen, to come out and explain some basic facts about police work and how the police have been under the gun and how we as a society have dumped a lot of problems on the police department. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
How the police department is getting blamed for a lot of things they have no control over.
Well, this is definitely one that they're getting blamed for because they did have control over it. But to what end does that conversation get us? Where do we end up with that?
Well, because the narrative that you hear a lot, not everywhere, but a lot, is that the police are bad, the police are racist, the police are this, police are that. And we are, as a society, are dumping a lot of problems on the police department that they were never designed or trained to handle. Now, I'm not excusing what happened. I have not seen the video. I'm sure it's pretty graphic, and what happened should have never happened. But I'm looking at the big picture. We need to start looking at this with the long view.
Is this a national issue?
Yes and no, in my opinion. Yes, there are some police departments that are racist, but most police are not racist. Most policemen don't get up in the morning and say to themselves, God, I'm going to strap on a gun and I want to make sure I get in a gunfight and shoot somebody. That's not the way that works.
No,
and you know
don't.
that.
I know that.
And most police go through their entire career, even the ones that are on the patrolling the street, without ever having to pull a gun, or if they did pull a gun on somebody, it was maybe one or two times. Of course, if you look at these TV cop shows, every time they walk out the door, it's a gunfight at the OK Corral.
Nick, let me posit something to you here. If this had been 5 African-American police officers, same exact conduct, same exact way, but they beat down a 29-year-old white guy, One, do you think it's national news? And two, do you think Governor Polis weighs in on this and issues the kind of a press release that he did on behalf of Tyre?
I think that there have been plenty of instances where black cops have beaten up on white people. However, it wouldn't have had the voltage that this situation has. And as far as Polis is concerned, I just wish he'd stop being a petty little bureaucrat or a politician. And if he really has national aspirations, he should act like that. He should act a little bit more Reagan-esque, if that's possible.
I think this press release that he issued, this statement on this, is because he's trying to weigh in on these national issues for the benefit of his future national campaign.
That's
I mean, that's
exactly
what it feels like to me.
Of course it is.
Did 49 other governors all weigh in? Maybe they did. I'd still be pissed off if they did, but I don't know how many other governors chimed in on this.
But the problem with the police department is that it's an occupation where there's no tolerance for failure. It only takes 1 out of 100 cops to do something really bad or really stupid to taint the whole department. There's no other profession that's under the gun, especially in our society, like police departments.
I think that there's some truth there, especially today. We have this heightened sensitivity to police misconduct, or even the allegation of police misconduct. And so that it only takes a couple of them to really bring them down. And I think this, by the way, is going to be a setback for law enforcement nationally. And I worry that this is going to give license to the libs in Congress to try to come up with another way to control or influence local police departments and sheriff's departments. And candidly, it's none of their business. That is not why Congress exists, to help run, manage, or provide guidelines for local law enforcement. That's not their business. They should focus on their own problems, but they don't.
And this is why part of one of the big problems is that we have very, very few real leaders. And that's why these problems get blown out of proportion so quickly. It would really be nice if Biden would just step up and be presidential and say a few things concerning the whole police situation in this country and how we as a society love to blame somebody or something, and the police are easy targets. But that's not going to happen with this president.
I agree with you, Nick. I think the only thing we're going to hear, and thank you for the phone call, man. Nick's line is open, 303-696-1971. I think the only thing we're going to hear is more of what we've heard right now, which is the outcry, the wringing of hands, and the legitimate outpouring of sympathy for a mom, and loved ones who knew this guy. I mean, he shouldn't have died. Based on the things that I've said, he should not have died, of course, or been beaten. But this is now going to be spun into some kind of a narrative that will be used as a wedge issue. We are now going to use, again, just like what happened with George Floyd, and they bootstrapped Elijah McClain into this thing. They're going to use this as a wedge political issue. I'm interested to know, by the way, which change.org petition got the governor to issue the proclamation, because typically he will not take action on these issues until there have been at least 2 million people on a change.org petition. I don't know how many caused him to issue this unnecessary release. I wonder if anyone in the media even asked him, why are you chiming in on this? I feel like the media too, just because of how they're ideologically positioned, that for them, of course, why isn't every politician chiming in on this? Everyone should have some opinion on this thing that took place in Tennessee. I don't know. I don't know. Why doesn't the media ask him, why did you put this out? Why didn't 49 other governors put something out? What makes you different? Why do you feel it necessary to weigh in on this? Because I think the conversation that we had with Nick, and I'm starting to think this, if the race were different on either side of the transaction, this horrible criminal transaction, I don't think it gets the same coverage. Doesn't mean easier or better coverage, because honestly, it had been 5 white cops beating on Tyre Nichols, Memphis burns to the ground. If it's 5 African-American cops beating down on a white guy, there's no letter from Governor Polis to America that says, hey, I care, I feel cops should be bad. There's no chance of that. But the narrative is just right here for a conversation like that. Hey, listen, we're going to cut away for a break, and we're going to come back, and I'll get some more of these texts that keep pouring in right here too. And then, of course, you give us a call at 303-696-1971. But I want to first tell you about Littleton Jewelry. Now, as you know, looking at a calendar, we are a mere, 16 days, maybe 15 days from Valentine's Day. Now, Valentine's Day is not that you need an excuse, is a perfect excuse to get in the car and drive out to Littleton Jewelry. I think with 2 weeks left, too, you probably have plenty of time to do what they do best right now, which is the custom jewelry. You drive out there, go south of Hudson Gardens, just west of Santa Fe, super easy to get to, turn right by the jewelry repair sign. And you go in there and you see Jesse and you say, I'd like to say hi to Jesse. Jesse will come out. You say, hi, Jesse. I listen to 710 KNUS. He'll say, oh, we love 710. We love George. What can we do for you? And you become part of the family. And the thing that they do that is just so different and so special is the attention to the custom design jewelry that you will help create for that special someone in your life, and just in time for Valentine's Day. You can bring in your old gold, silver jewelry. They'll appraise it. They'll clean it. They'll fix it. Hell, they may even buy it. Buy and sell gold, silver, platinum, coins, jewels, all that regular stuff. But they're also a watch repair place. That's how they got started when it was Jesse's parents so many years ago. But he's taken it to that next level. Become part of that Littleton Jewelry family. Go out there to littletonfinejewelry.com. Take a look around on there. But get in the car and go drive and see them. Honestly, if you want to feel good about humanity, meet a bunch of great people that are interested in working with you as a member of the community, not just a dollar sign, then go out to Littleton Jewelry and check them out. Tell them George sent you. They're going to love that too. And here's the cool part. From now until tomorrow, and this has been going on for a week, all sterling silver pieces are 20% off through tomorrow. That gives you today and tomorrow to get over there and reap those rewards. 20% off. Go check them out. littletonfinejewelry.com. That's littletonfinejewelry.com. When we come back, Mike, everybody else on hold at 303-696-1971 and the text. It's me, George Brockler, on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Bracco right back with you here on 710 KNUS. Some texters here. One yellow flag for unnecessary roughness can send one team to the Super Bowl and the other team home after a great season. The Bengals' Joseph Asai spoiled yesterday's games. Of course, the refs did too. One cop's bad judgment also causes problem for the whole team. This is a case of beating you into submission. I equate the police beating to the Biden administration doing everything to get us to submit to the COVID vaccine. I get where you're going, but that's quite a reach. Let's get to the phone lines. 303-696-1971. Mike, you're on 710 KNUS. Mike, what do you make of all this?
Yes, sir, George. I'm a little challenged by, the stuff that does and does not make the news cycle. If it fits narratives, I've written you an email sometime back, one military guy talking to another military guy, but was stabbed within about 30 seconds to a minute of my life down at the library. It was a 23-year-old or 22-year-old black youth out of Ohio, but he had spent some time here in Colorado. And I can't get any information. I'm working through Quora, FOIA. It's over a year now that my DA has deflected everything.
Really?
All my inquiries.
This is in Denver?
Yes, sir. At the Smiley Branch Library. And so I've been encouraged highly to try to dig. I mean, I've got policemen that have dropped little hints as to the idea, dude, you know absolutely nothing about this guy.
Yeah.
And saying that same thing over and over again at various times. And between that and when they say they fingerprinted him, knew who they had, the judge saying it looks like he's got a history of mental illness. I want to know if this guy was just let out of the can, during the 2020-2021 COVID cycle, this sort of thing. It's horrible. But I do got to say the other side of it that I'm challenged by, and maybe it's just me listening to this guy pleading for help, it really hurts my soul in that, they had to port me in order to find out how fast I was bleeding out internally. And it's just disgusting with, if God ever could have heard me, that's when he heard me.
Where's the status of the stabber right now?
They've stuck him down in Pueblo, or at least they claim
mental health stuff. Then, right?
They claim they have. And so can I prove that, or are they just holding him in a cell trying to figure out the cheapest way? Because I'll tell you, my mom was called the day of this, or I asked them to call my mom because I didn't know what shape I was in and was about to go in for surgery and die. And they turned around and called her and told her I was stabbed out in the park, and that I'd come into the library for help. That was the same thing that read on my crazy HIPAA report way back in the 600 and some pages, was that I was stabbed in the park. They were trying so hard to deflect, thinking that I was going to die and that the city was going to try to remove themselves as far as possible from taking any responsibility for it. So it's just such a challenge, listening to this guy cry for help. It really hurts me. I think it's sort of like seeing somebody die on television. That's your last moments between you and God, and that crap shouldn't be broadcasted every 5 minutes. But that's beside the point. I know what makes the news and what doesn't. I'm sorry about that part of it, but it's just so hurtful and stuff that what I'm going through and that I can't get any traction. I can get a little bit because I'm sure somebody with that organization is listening right now. But I've written DAs, mayors. I've covered the city. They all know my story.
Is this guy still waiting to be returned to competency like the dude out of Boulder?
Yes, exactly what it is. They do not want to hear that this guy is capable of doing what he did and that they messed up letting him out over and over and over again.
That shouldn't be reason for them to keep him down there. He should be, if he can be restored to competency, so it can be. How old is this guy?
He's 22, fortunately, so he's old enough to be held as an adult. And it's just, I've turned around and submitted a Quora, and it's a $500,000 request for restitution with respect to how messed up I am on my left side and stuff like that, and what all I've endured. But it's just an amazingly difficult thing to work through. And as a single guy, my parents are in their 80s, late 80s, out in the Lakewood Golden area, and I'm really struggling with how to get this off the ground and get it moving, because all I get back after a million questions on whether my DA has ever ran into this guy before or ever handled him. And my advocate is that the DA takes the letter and says, no, we're appropriately prosecuting this case. And that was his sole answer to a series of questions. So it's difficult.
Mike, do you feel like the coverage here would be different if the color of the people involved was different? Like if it was white here, black there?
I'm sorry, there's no question. If I had a Gadsden flag hanging in my front yard, and as a white guy I attacked him in the library, unprovoked, if I snuck up to him just like he did, he hunted me, knowing that this was going to get him 3 hots and a cot. Yes, sir. No question, it would have made the nightly news.
Is there any chance he was at the library to smoke meth? Because as it turns out, many of the libraries here are places people go to.
Down with that problem. I asked drugs. All the paperwork, almost everything is heavily redacted, and they indicate that there's no drugs involved in it. Now, is that something to try to keep it cleaner? Because I thought maybe it was a sales operation. He was in there for 3+ hours, as far as I know, hunting people, and it came down to me in the last 40 minutes having walked in, and they'll only let these 6 minutes of the tape before I was stabbing, and 6 minutes after a full year, where these people back east, they request, and a week later they're getting to review everything. They're just screaming screaming their lungs out. And me, I've been screaming my lungs out here, and they've denied me, and I finally, on the behalf of this family, we want to see.
Well, Mike, I hope you get answers, and I hope you'll update us when you do. I think some of this stuff, though, too, is CORE is not going to be the right vehicle because it's still a pending case. They're going to claim it's criminal justice records under the CCJRA. And under those circumstances, law enforcement executives have a great deal of discretion as to what to release and not. So
my question to you is, what sort of timeline would I have in order to establish and say, all right, well, this is actually day one. I'm not sitting on this. I have not been sitting on
it's tough. It's a tough one because as long as this guy is down south and they're looking under the hood and trying to restore him to competency, it freezes the process in place. And as long as that process is open and ongoing, I think the DA has the ability to say, I'm not giving you any records because it's still an ongoing prosecution. At some point here, this guy's going to come back here and we're going to have to put him in a courtroom in front of a jury. I can't have all this information floating around out there. That's what I think happens.
And at that point, I will actually then be able to pursue whatever I need to pursue and not have lost these year or 2 years in the process.
It's tough. Well, Mike, look, good luck. First off, I'm glad that you made it. I mean, it sounds like a horrific story, being stabbed at the library. And I'm glad that you pulled through. I do think the coverage here, and maybe this is part of the takeaway, this thing out of Tennessee is horrible because it's on video, but the coverage feels more and more like it's been tainted or at least impacted by the color of the people involved, by the race of the folks involved. I mean, it would be far worse if it were white cops on an African-American. It would be far less, in my opinion, and wouldn't get any sort of response from the governor of the state of Colorado if Tyre were a white guy. There's just something going on here. The dynamics of race in terms of the law enforcement piece, which are clearly not present here, That is clearly part of the journalistic narrative that takes place with most of the mainstream media that's out there. They want there to be, I can't imagine how many newspaper folks were just bummed that every single officer involved was African-American. Like, are you kidding me? There isn't one white guy that we can use as he's the leader, he's the front runner, he's the reason. Nope, no, nothing like that, because this at its end had nothing to do with race. I know all these texters that are coming in here saying, oh, it's about resisting. Resisting's part of it. I get it. But maybe too, some of the other texters are right. Maybe this is a function of the fact that we have created an environment where the cops are on their heels. They can't be proactive. They can only be reactive. They're reacting to the community. They're reacting to the increase in crime. They're reacting to the decreased accountability that criminals face even after they're apprehended. Maybe all of this is creating an environment, and I'm not forgiving these guys at all. I'm telling you, you can create an environment where people make bad decisions for which they should be held accountable. But we should still be able to talk about the environment. Like, maybe that's what's going on here. Now, I guess I'm happy that we have video. I mean, you can only speculate as to how much of this stuff went on in the past that we never captured. I'm glad we have it on video. I'm glad that person that had the poll cam there was good enough to try to, whoever that was, to train it on that scene. And maybe it's a city person. Maybe, I don't know. I'm glad they were there for it. But this won't be the last one of these. And it's something that we should talk about. But it should never be the predicate, in my opinion, for congressional intervention on managing local law enforcement. That is our business. At most, it's the state of Colorado's business, but it should be the county's business or the city's business. But it should never be Congress's business. I mean, do you really give a crap what Nancy Pelosi thinks about law enforcement in Tennessee? I don't. Listen, that's it for us. We're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to have some more guests. I think I'm going to have Rose Puglisi on, give us an update on the legislature and some other things. We'll talk about the news of the day and more analysis on this. My thanks to the great Professor Smith from Baylor. You stick around. We'll be back tomorrow. George Brockler, George Show, 710 KNUS.